Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. The Atlantic magazine publishes more texts between top Trump officials discussing Yemen attack plans. Russia says Western sanctions must be lifted before a maritime ceasefire with Ukraine can start. Prince Harry has announced he's stepping down from the charity Centrabale after a row between its trustees and the chair of the board. Our top story. The Atlantic magazine has published more messages between senior White House officials that shows them discussing US airstrikes in Yemen on the encrypted chat app Signal. The magazine's editor, Jeffrey Goldberg, who was accidentally added to a chat in a major security breach, has said he's released more messages that he left out of his original article after the White House accused him of lying. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has responded to the latest article by saying it's another hoax written by a Trump hater who is well known for his sensationalist spin. Yesterday, US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said he took full responsibility for the group chat during an interview with Ingram Angle on Fox News. Let's take a look.
I take responsibility. I built the group. Okay. So. But look, that's the part that we have to figure out. And that's the part that embarrassing, yes. But Pete and I are veterans. We know these operations. He has been an excellent Secretary of Defense. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I just talked to Elon on the way here. We've got the best technical minds looking at how this happened. But I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone.
Let's go live to Washington now to speak to Sol Montes Bradley, Vice President of Communications for the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Thank you so much for joining me. The Trump team are still attempting to shift the blame. Vice President J.D. Vance has again doubled down on defense, claiming the journalists oversold the story. What do you make of these attacks on Jeffrey Goldberg?
Good evening. Glad to be here. Well, I don't see these as attacks on Jeffrey Goldberg, but a fairly accurate description of his career so far. And to state the facts is not necessarily an attack. As we've just heard, Mike Waltz has admitted responsibility for creating the group, and we are yet to determine whether the inclusion of Jeff Goldberg was an oversight or whether it was done by a staffer on purpose. That we don't know yet. But in any case, that doesn't seem like an attack to me.
Aren't the Trump administration lucky, though, in many ways, that Jeffrey Goldberg had some integrity and came forward and didn't release all of the details initially? He actually showed good journalist initiative in many people's opinions.
Well, if Jeff Goldberg had any integrity, he would have taken himself out of the conversation when it was obvious he had nothing to do there. The fact that he tried to do a gotcha on the participants in that chat, who incidentally did not discuss any classified information, it speaks otherwise to his integrity.
The fallout from the Signal group chat scandal doesn't appear to be going away. How damaging is this war plan leak to the Trump administration?
I don't think it's going to be damaging at all. In about a week, we will have moved on to other pastures and new and more strident affairs, and this will be totally forgotten. The one thing that nobody can change is that, well, some of the comments may have been sophomoric in this conversation. there was no actual classified information discussed, no methods, no weapons, no specifics. And the attacks went on as scheduled and were a total success. So this will blow over in the next news cycle, I'm afraid.
New leaked messages show the US Defense Secretary detailing the Houthi strike plan in Signal. In the chat, we see times, we see dates, we see the weaponry. How would you classify the content of that chat? Do you think it's sensitive, top secret, or just sort of a chat between friends and the government almost?
Well, I'm afraid you're right on this one. There are no friendly chats among friends at this level. The content is sensitive, but not classified, and it's not specific. So sensitive but not classified puts it in a category where the harm is much less. Perhaps Vice President J.D. Vance's opinions on having to rescue Europe from itself is more damaging than anything they said about the Houthis.
So I was really wanting to ask you that. How damaging is this now for the US and its allies, especially when it comes to sharing sensitive information? Let's be honest, this isn't a good look for the Trump administration, is it?
No, I wouldn't think that it characterizes the entire administration. And while it is undoubtedly a red face out there, this kind of thing happens all the time. And there is nothing in the chat that other government officials around the world say, and worse, every day in conversations that are sometimes overheard. I don't think it's going to have legs.
Sol Montez Bradley, Vice President of Communications for the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Thank you very much for your insights. And let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Sudan's army has confirmed its control of Camp Taiba, the last base of the Rapid Support Forces in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. The commander, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, announced from inside the presidential palace that Khartoum is free. This comes as the commander of Khartoum operations told Al Arabiya News that his forces took the capital's international airport. Now, at least 17 US strikes have hit Sada and Amran on Wednesday, according to Houthi media. The group's website claims American warplanes carried out aggressive air raids, causing material damage to citizens' property. No casualties have been reported. Washington previously promised to use overwhelming force on the Houthis until the group stopped firing at vessels in the Red Sea. At least 24 people have died after wildfires continue to rage through South Korea's southeast region. Authorities believe the majority of victims are in their 60s and their 70s. The fires, fueled by strong and dry winds, have forced more than 28,000 people to evacuate their homes. Thousands of people turned out to demonstrate in Turkey on Tuesday night for a seventh night of protest. More than 1,400 people have been detained in Istanbul so far over the arrest of the city's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. President Erdogan has urged patience and common sense amid what he described as very sensitive days. And the Oscar-winning director of an Israel-Palestine documentary has been released after being arrested by Israeli authorities earlier this week. Hamdan Balal, co-director of No Other Land, said he was attacked by Israeli settlers in his village in the occupied West Bank after he filmed them attacking a neighbour's house. Russia and Ukraine are continuing to accuse each other of trying to derail a US brokered deal that could stop fighting in the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Russia has said some Western sanctions must be lifted before a maritime ceasefire with Ukraine can start. For more on this, I'm joined from Global Affairs analyst and former US diplomat at the United Nations, Jonathan Watchell. Thank you, Jonathan, so much for joining me. So Donald Trump has actually said himself that Russia may be dragging its feet. Is Russia giving the US team the runaround?
Russia is doing what Russia wants to do, and that's Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin has always wanted to have the Soviet Union returned, and certainly looks at Ukraine and doesn't see a sovereign nation, but instead sees a nation that should fall under complete territorial control of the Russian Federation as part of what historically in his mind is the Russian Empire. So there are just two different perspectives on this. So yes, I suppose, Leigh Ann, you could say that it's a go around Trump. It's actually just Vladimir Putin being Vladimir Putin in terms of what he's always espoused.
Russia has said its new ambassadors heading to Washington today as Kyiv and Moscow dispute the Black Sea ceasefire details. Does the Trump administration need to start applying more pressure on both sides? As you said earlier, Putin's going to do what Putin wants to do.
Yeah, Putin will do whatever is expedient for Putin. So if you give Putin an inch, he'll take in territorial gains 20% of Ukraine and will want to hold on to it as the beginning of what he would love to see as complete control of the country. In terms of the Black Sea fleet and not the Black Sea transportation and whatnot, obviously that's something that the Russian Federation would like to have to be able to get its agricultural products, including fertilizer, out to market and use, of course, the seaport that it enjoys now that it controls the Crimean Peninsula and has its Black Fleet able to function out of that port in Sevastopol easily. The Ukrainians, of course, also rely heavily on the Black Sea for their own, trade needs and transportation needs. It's their lifeline too. So it's expedient for both countries to enter a deal like this. The difference here is that Vladimir Putin really has certain agendas that he wants to carry out here, and he wants to ensure that if there is going to be a cessation of fighting and finally some sort of peace deal that would be worked out here, that it would be advantageous to Russia. And just how advantageous is something that Vladimir Putin right now, in terms of gains and in terms of ousting Ukrainian forces out of Kursk, which is part of the Russian Federation, and other movements. Right now, Russia seems to have the upper hand.
Can the US still be trusted by Europe after the war chat leak, do you think, Jonathan?
Look, certainly that's not a particularly pleasant thing to read if you're a European leader and looking at the United States as a partner. Certainly, there are comments in there that are, of course, worrying. But then again, let's be honest, Leigh Ann, the last weeks have signaled the very things that went out on that signal in terms of Europe needing to stand on its own 2 feet and stop relying on the United States for, carrying out some of the more major lift when it comes to military action, including some of the logistic needs that the Europeans certainly don't have the technological capabilities right now that the United States has in terms of surveillance and missile defense and other areas that the United States at the moment have supremacy.
Emmanuel Macron is actually meeting Zelensky again in Paris today. European allies are rallying around Ukraine. But as you said there, the US has a much stronger army, if you want to put it that way, military and intelligence. Is the US actually worried about all these meetings in Europe? Do they take any notice at all?
It depends on who you ask. If you're going to ask me, of course, I as an American and an American national who believes in the Constitution and what the United States was founded to espouse, I'm concerned about our leadership in the world, and we should be playing arguably a larger role in terms of world affairs, given our contribution historically. So giving away some of that control while Europe of course, should participate to the extent that the European nations want to do that. Certainly, the United States has earned the respect of the world in terms of a global power and having a say in international affairs. Losing some of that position is something that I certainly am not thrilled about. But then again, to each their own, and contributions should be respected.
Absolutely. And just one final thought from you. Donald Trump said he could end this war in one day. We haven't seen that happen, and we're still seeing attacks from both sides. Where do you think this is going to lead to? And do you think there will be peace eventually?
Eventually, yes, of course, Leigh Ann. This will one day stop. The guns will stop, and this tragic, now 3-year-long battle that really is so senseless when you really look at it, will be done. But it's going to take some time. And, a lot of things are said on campaign trails by Republicans and Democrats. And then, once you're sitting in the White House and you have the Department of Defense control and other, State Department, things get very complicated. Geopolitics is very complicated. Our relationship with Russia historically over decades has been deeply complicated. Our relationship with Ukraine, and now we're seeing, some tensions with Europe. It's going to take some time. It always was. Thinking that this would be accomplished within a day, we're seeing play out what reality is. The conflict is deeply, deeply complicated, and Ukraine could find itself in a position in which it has to, for an unknown amount of time, let Russia control 20% of its territory, and NATO participation may go away, if not entirely, certainly in such a time span that within your and my lifespan, it won't have happened. So there's still a lot of ground to cover here, a lot of painful concessions to be made.
Thank you so much for talking to me this evening. Global affairs analyst and former US diplomat at the United Nations, Jonathan Watchell there. Thank you once again. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron will welcome Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky to Paris this evening ahead of a summit of European leaders tomorrow. The meeting follows the US announcement regarding a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine in the Black Sea made on Tuesday night. Earlier today, the European Union said it would not lift its sanctions on Russia before the unconditional withdrawal of Moscow's forces from Ukraine. We can now go live to Paris to speak to our correspondent there, Ross Cullen. Ross, thank you so much for joining me. Right, so the two men meet again. What's on the agenda this time?
Yeah, good evening, Leigh Ann. That's right, Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is here in Paris meeting Emmanuel Macron this evening. The two men get a chance for one-on-one talks. This is the first time that Volodymyr Zelensky has been in Paris this year. He was here most recently in December for the reopening of Notre Dame, when there were trilateral talks between him, Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump. Just the bilateral talks on Wednesday evening, a one-on-one working dinner between the two presidents, a chance to lay the groundwork and really try to understand their positions ahead of tomorrow's summit, which the Elysee Palace has said will focus on the immediate strengthening of assistance to Ukraine, how a ceasefire can be implemented and extended, the modalities of long-term support for the Ukrainian armed forces, and the necessary security guarantees for Ukraine.
A lot on the agenda. Now, Ross, a senior aide to President Zelensky has said Ukraine needs troops who are ready to fight from Europe, not peacekeepers. And this, of course, comes ahead of that summit tomorrow. There is an argument they are not taking much action while we see some plans put in. Will we see some plans put in place in the next couple of days?
Leigh Ann, the whole idea of these boots on the ground that has been proposed most notably by London and Paris, by Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, is very complex and is certainly not one which has seen unanimous support among all of the allies. It is incredibly complex when you put into motion the idea of Western troops inside Ukraine. However, Russia have already stated that that cannot happen. That is simply out of the question. Any troops from any NATO countries to be deployed inside Ukraine after any potential peace agreement. However, that is exactly what Ukraine seemed to suggest could well be worthwhile, having to try to police the ceasefire if it is put in place, that permanent peace deal. Certainly something that France and Britain are prepared to do, likely to be thousands of troops supplied by each country. However, many questions because if those troops are deployed to protect ports, airports and power plants, and potentially in the centre or the relatively calm west of the country, the question is, can they be effective if the front line that needs monitoring is in the east of the country? What happens, for example, if British soldiers were fired upon, or if a French military convoy was attacked? Would there be a right of reply? So there are many questions still to be answered, particularly by France and Britain and Ukraine, about how this reassurance force or this peacekeeping force made up of countries of the coalition of the willing, as the British Prime Minister is calling it. There are many questions to be answered about how all of the technicalities of such a complex deployment of soldiers inside Ukraine would work. That coalition of the willing has been building countries inside NATO but outside Europe, like Canada. For example, Australia have also said that they will be willing to join, and EU countries like the Netherlands, Finland and Denmark, for example, seem to be ready to play their part in potentially sending troops inside Ukraine. That is certainly one of the key questions that will be discussed by Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron this evening, and by the wider delegations of European heads of state and heads of government tomorrow.
Ross Cullen in Paris, thank you so much for joining me. Let's take a look at the top business news now. Tesla has announced it will launch in Saudi Arabia on the 10th of April. A launch event will take place at the Bujari Terrace in Riyadh, where Tesla's best-selling lineup will be showcased. Tesla, which is owned by the world's richest man, Elon Musk, already has several locations across the Middle East, including in the United Arab Emirates, Jordan and Qatar. The OBR has halved the UK growth forecast for 2025, according to the British Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who delivered her spring statement earlier today. Reeves revealed she was not satisfied with the numbers, but told MPs growth was forecast to improve in the next 4 years. In better news for consumers, British inflation slowed more than expected, with consumer prices rising by 2.8% in February after a 3% increase in January. Now to sports news. The Brazilian captain Marquinhos has apologised to the fans after an embarrassing thrashing by Argentina in Buenos Aires in the World Cup qualifiers. The current world champions ran away with the game in the first half, eventually beating Brazil 4-1, while Argentina have secured their spot for the 2026 World Cup. Brazil still has a lot of work to do to secure an automatic berth. Now, Prince Harry has announced he's stepping down from the charity Centrale after a row between its trustees and the chair of the board. The Duke of Sussex co-founded the organisation, which aims to help people in southern Africa living with HIV and AIDS in honour of his mother, Princess Diana. Harry's co-founder, Prince Sissoho of Lesotho, and the board of trustees have also resigned after the relationship with its chairwoman broke down beyond repair. I'm now joined by royal editor Sarah Hewson. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. So Prince Harry has said he's devastated and in shock to have quit as patron of the charity. What more do we know about the row that led to this fallout?
Hello to you, Leigh Ann. Well, this is an extraordinary row, and it has only intensified as the day has gone on. As Prince Harry said, he has had to take the unthinkable decision with a heavy heart to step down from the charity which he founded along with Princess of Lesotho in memory of their late mothers. Now, this has all come about because of a row that has emerged between the Board of Trustees and the chairwoman, Dr. Sophie Chandoka. There was a serious disagreement on the direction the charity should be taking. The Board of Trustees had wanted to vote the chair out, but she in turn had refused to step down and had said she was going to sue them, to take them to the High Court. That then meant the Board of Trustees had to step down, and Prince Harry and Princess as patrons decided to step down as well in support and solidarity of the trustees. Some of them among Prince Harry's closest friends, Mark Dyer, for example, his long-term mentor, described as his second father, who have been involved in the charity since its conception almost 20 years ago. And this evening we've had a statement, the first response to this from Centre Barley, Leigh Ann, where they seem to be saying that the charity doesn't need its patrons. Thanks very much for what you've done, but we're better off without you. It's my interpretation of it. They say, while trustees are key for governance and regulation, and patrons, especially founders, are an honour to have, it is the people in the field who are advancing the work, no matter what.
And also, the chairwoman, Dr. Sophie Chandoka, has released her own strongly worded statement where she describes herself as a whistleblower. But what exactly, Sarah, do you think she was alluding to in this statement about the management of the charity?
Yeah, this is an extremely strongly worded statement from the chair. She talks about poor governance, weak executive management. She talks about bullying. She talks about misogyny and misogynoir, the discrimination of black women. She also makes a very thinly veiled attack at what appears to be Prince Harry when she talks about people playing the victim card and then using the very media that they disdain in order to take on someone who has challenged them. Given Prince Harry's battles, very well reported battles with the media, it does certainly seem that she is, without naming him, talking about him. So this row has become very dirty indeed, very nasty, and it is all playing out in the media. It is set to go to the Charity Commission, who are now investigating, and also to the High Court in London. So we haven't heard the last of this yet.
Sarah, that's something I wanted to touch on. It feels like every move Meghan and Harry make is watched and it's scrutinised by the world. What impact will this have on Harry's reputation? And I do know that you've met Prince Harry and been to Centre Barley. How do you think this will be feeling right now?
So this is Prince Harry's baby. This was really his coming-of-age project, the charity that he founded after he'd spent 2 months in Lesotho on his gap year back in 2004. I went out to Lesotho with him in 2008 to see the work that the charity was doing. And Harry was so passionate about this project. You could see his mother's legacy playing out there, the way that he was with the children, the pride that he had to be really making a difference in this field, helping orphans, helping victims of HIV/AIDS. And to lose that, to have to step down now amid this almighty blow-up, it will be absolutely devastating for Prince Harry. We don't really know what's gone on behind closed doors. So in terms of reputational damage, it's hard to say at the moment, but it's clear that there have been very, very serious problems going on behind closed doors.
The photographs are absolutely fantastic. You and Prince Harry both look very happy in them, I must say.
And much younger, considerably younger.
I was going to say younger, but then I thought, actually, we'll say happier, because happier, you know, it's probably slightly more polite than younger. But Sarah, just one other quick thought. King Charles and Queen Camilla have postponed their visit to see Pope Francis at the Vatican. This probably comes as no surprise, but what more do we know?
Yes. Now, this visit to Italy, which is taking place between the 7th and 10th of April, had been framed around a meeting with Pope Francis. The King had made it clear that because of the Pope's ailing health over recent months, he wanted to have this one particular potentially final meeting with Pope Francis. But I think for anyone who saw those images of Pope Francis when he left hospital and just how frail he is, it was clear that that visit was going to be very challenging. And on medical advice, it's been decided that the Pope does need to rest and that that meeting shouldn't take place. The tour itself, the state visit to Italy, will continue. They won't be visiting the Holy See, but they will continue with their visit to Rome and Ravenna. The programme will be adapted. But actually, it was about to be a very poignant visit for them because it coincides with the King and Queen's 20th wedding anniversary. And in fact, their wedding had to be delayed to April the 9th, 2005, because of the death of Pope Jean Paul II. And King Charles, as then Prince of Wales, had travelled to the Vatican to attend his funeral. So the timing of this was really significant, and they really wanted to have that audience with the Pope. Unfortunately, it's not now going to take place.
Sarah Hewson, young and old version, royal editor there. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
A reminder of our top stories. The Atlantic magazine publishes more texts between top Trump officials discussing Yemen attack plans. Russia says Western sanctions must be lifted before a maritime ceasefire with Ukraine can start. Prince Harry has announced he's stepping down from the charity Centre Barley after a row between its trustees and the chair of the board. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you so much for joining us. The dressing room is coming up next. And of course, don't miss Tom Burges Watson with GNT. Good night.
At Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News.
It's very impressive.
Where knowledge meets perspective.
Welcome to the dressing room with our Arabiya News, to a very special podcast episode, our England career and England in general. First of all, how have you done that injury in your thumb?
New slicer, mate.
Slicing, yeah?
Slicing veg and stuff, yeah. I'm going to stick to knives, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, mate,
well, there was a part...
I think that's a promotion, isn't it? You failed miserably on the slicing.
I'm not bad with a knife. The slicers are dangerous. I've took a proper chunk off, not like a little nick. I've took a good top quarter of the thumb off.
Oh, mate. Didn't you put a hammer through your leg about 3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah, I know. I didn't read the instructions.
Mutilate himself.
I didn't.
He is a mutant, though, isn't he? Like, he just regenerates his skin back. He regenerates his bones.
See what it's like later.
Well, you're like, do you know what you're? Like? You know who you are? You're Wolverine. You're my Wolverine. You're the closest thing to Wolverine that I would know. Southampton Wolverine.
I've got a beard coming.
Yeah.
I like it, mate. I like it. But we're going to talk England.
Yeah.
England. And England has got a special place in all of our hearts. But also, England youth we start with. But we first met on an England youth trip, didn't we? Yeah. Famously. Then we had that.
Another time he led me astray. Mate,
that's what he seems to keep
got me in trouble. He got me in trouble a bit. He got me a little bit.
Did he?
You know, like what's that film where they... Step Brothers. Did we just become best friends? we had that moment. Right?
We travelled up to London together after a Saints West Ham game.
Yeah.
It was even under 18s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was under 18s.
Oh yeah, because you got sometimes like when you're going away and you played each other, the FA will kind of get you in the same car or.
Well, the team had already met up, but obviously because we were playing for the first team at the time, we were meeting up later. Let's play the game.
So for people listening at home, like England use it's a very organised thing now. Like you get sent chauffeurs, like and for a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, remember the first time you get a chauffeur coming outside your house and the geezer in a suit and it was like. What's going on? Like everyone in the flats is like,
what's going on over there?
We had a car. Me and Bridgie were we were in the first team at the Dell, wasn't it?
I would have just turned 18.
Yeah, I was 17, and we had to get to Heathrow, stay overnight, and we were flying to Spain for a week-long.
Might have been longer than that. It was a tournament. Yeah,
it was like a week tournament in Spain, and there was any of the lads who were playing in the first team, Coley, would go. So I thought. I've got to be in a car for 2 hours with this geezer. I don't know him, right?
You might be a bell.
So we just played against each other. I can't even remember the game. And I was like, all right, geezer, how you doing? Like proper awkward. Like, yeah, where do you want to sit? Like, got down, right? Listen, what the kids don't need to understand is there was no iPads. There was, we
just conversation.
Conversation.
I don't know if Nokias were out then, actually.
What about the BlackBerry? BlackBerry, kids, or can't even talk to your mate.
Yeah, and we drove all the way down, probably in silence. And then when we got there, we met up with 3 or 4 other lads.
It was,
do you remember who they were?
Wright. David Wright.
David Wright from Crew.
And left back.
Lee Naylor.
Lee Naylor.
Are you sure there was 4?
Yeah, I was sure it was 4 of us. The other one might have stayed in.
Yeah, the other one. So we got there. We met an FA dignitary, and for them people, the FA dignitaries at home, and they're the people you see shaking hands with the first team. No, before the game when they walk along, they're like, "Hello, hello, all right, mate, yeah." Like, no, why are you here?
Who are you?
Anyway, we met one of them, and he's like, "Guys, right, we had a bit of dinner, and it must have been about 7:30 around that time at this, and then I don't know, called it on. Someone called it on." Should we go out for a few? Should we go out for a few? Bearing in mind we're 17 and 18, and
where were you?
I was at a hotel.
Heathrow.
Oh,
right next to
Heathrow Hotel.
Terminal what? Flight in the morning.
I don't know, geese.
You didn't even know what time he was at.
You basically had to get a flight in the morning.
Because there's nothing around Heathrow. But even back then, there was nothing around there. So what kind of...
We went in London, mate. We went London.
We went central.
Right in.
Right, listen, this is it, right? So I've gone... They've gone...
In our England
let's go out. Let's go out. I've got no experience. It ain't like I'm going out with Carlton Cole in the mid-2000s when he's got a hotline to every nightclub in London. You know what I mean? You can go anywhere. And I'm thinking... I've fronted it like, oh yeah, I'll sort it. I'm like, and I'm thinking, oh no, we got England tracksuits on.
Oh, no.
So I'm going, right, let me call someone. And I've rung my mates on the hotel phone. I've gone, listen, coming out. And they go, can't come out tonight, blah, blah, whatever. Yeah. Where should I go? I'm like, I don't know, Leicester Square, like a touristy place, right?
Square.
I think the club was called Gas Club.
I remember Gas Club.
Downstairs.
It was Garage Night.
Garage night. Dingy, grimy.
That's the way we like it.
So I've got that, and I'm walking up to the door, and I've fronted it all the way from Heathrow to Leicester Square. Going, don't worry, lads, I've got this right.
In tracksuits,
right? I think, and in tracksuits, I'm thinking, how on earth are we getting in right? So I've got a bullseye in my pocket, and I've walked up to the bouncer. I'm looking at him. He must have seen the desperation in my eyes. I've fronted him, and I've gone, all right, mate, how are you? I think I'll give him that one. Like the little man.
Like you know what you're doing. Like you know what you're doing.
The guy's obviously felt the bullseye, and he's gone, all right, so, and I've gone, mate, and I've listened, please let us in. And we went in, and it was bouncing. And I thought, you're like, oh, thank God for that.
Yeah.
And anyway, we had a brilliant night. Everyone was bouncing everywhere. It was like, we had a great night, like 3-4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And we've gone, we got to get home now.
Yeah.
But we lost. Was it Righty?
I can't remember. I think it might have been Righty.
Whether it was 5 or 4, it went down -1. We lost Righty, right? And we just gone back where we was steaming, and we got back to the hotel, and he's straight away. And this is when I knew I loved him. He went, let's bang on his door. I went, oh. He went, the dignitary looking after us, right?
At what time?
4
in the morning. I'm like, don't do that, kids. I'm like, don't do that. You're not going to do that. And I'm like, then my little naughty self come up and you're not going to do that.
Yeah, you're not going to do that. And you know, as soon as
I've just gone bang, bang, bang, and legged it down the
like that.
That's brilliant.
Running and stuff, but we've lost Righty, right? So then, you go to bed, you wake up, and it's like breakfast at 9:30.
Yeah.
then we're gonna, and like, we've had breakfast and we still can't find him. And then we're panicking now, me and him and Leigh Ann, we're like, well, no phones, remember? Like, this guy's just got to get back.
Yeah,
and I'm like, and we're waiting for our coach with our bags, with he ain't said nothing, has he? To be fair to him,
he didn't say
he didn't say a word to us, but we know that he knows, like, that it was us.
Yeah.
And we're going, just play it cool. Like,
cool, Rodney.
Cool. And it would let's be God knows how
Play it cool, Rodney. Play it cool.
God knows how I'm like the one. I'm like him and Naylor going to me. You're gonna have to tell him that we've lost someone. We've lost him. And I'm going, what I mean? What I mean? So I'm literally, and it was like, oh right, and you're building up.
Right, he's still not there.
He's not there, right? He's not there, and I'm like, oh, I'm literally, I can looking at the fella. I can picture his face. Don't know his name. Right, and I'm looking at him. Right, I started. Right, I'm gonna have to go to him. Like, sir, listen, we're man. They were school teachers, weren't they? We're school. I was, sir, listen. I'm sorry, we're a man down. We lost someone. Right, I confessed to everything. Then behind him, I just see Righty stumble out the cab. And he's like, and I'm thinking, and he's like behind him, and he's gone upstairs, quick change, and he's got in. And he's like, where you been? He went, I don't know. I slept in a shop doorway. He slept in a shop window, and then
doorway.
And then, and then I remember David Platt was turning up to meet us when he was travelling with us.
Oh, no.
So then we got on the coach and we got there. Anyway, the fella, and fair play to him, he never once mentioned a word, apart from one time. One time.
20 years later.
Oh, this
I'm talking
10 years later.
But he must have rose up the ranks from babysitting 18-year-olds to becoming one of the guys that shake
main
hands,
guys,
like the main guys with the ties.
Yeah.
When you win the cup.
And, when you win, like, and he's coming. We're playing for England. And he's coming along. I've seen him. I've got, great scene.
So this guy,
and he's gone, and he's leant in. He's leant into me, and he's gone. And to be fair, I did actually like him. He swore at me. He went, "You little."
Yeah. Oh, is it?
He said, banging on my door at 4 a.m. He said, "Good luck." And I'm about to go and play for England. I was like,
that's brilliant.
So for everyone who digs all them, they've got a heart. Because he could have stitched us, didn't he? He could have stitched us, and he didn't. But
that's brilliant. That's a great story.
And that's the first time. And then Bridgie.
That is brilliant. And you've never looked back since.
Never looked back.
Still going out now.
Still going out now. Still doing the naughty stuff. You know what I mean?
Still doing the same
thing.
You
know what? Yeah, those are the type of stories where that's where you make bond and make friendships. And even if, like, you know how it is in football, right?
Yeah.
Like, you do make friends on the way,
Yeah.
But you know, like when you've made a friend, you just know this is for life. This,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, we see a load of we go in different dressing rooms all the time. Play for different clubs, and you do bond with people. Don't get me wrong, but there's nothing saying that you're going to stay in contact after if you have to leave on and go and do.
There's a lot of goodbyes, isn't there?
There's a lot of goodbyes, but not. And I always hope there's not a goodbye forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I hope that we
see you later.
We reconcile, But it's just not that sometimes. Yeah. And there's some friendships I've made on the way that we've not got together again. Do you know what I mean? I thought, I never thought that I wouldn't be speaking to you because we were so tight when we was playing together. So it's weird.
You actually said to us the other night on the night out, you went, what did he say? He said, I never thought I'd be friends with you two.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
But
I think he said that on here.
No.
Said on one of these.
But you know what it is, yeah? That is what it is. I always thought, but me and you, but I've always had my little circles. You had your circles.
Yeah.
And it's not like we was into the same things at the time. Like, I was doing my own thing. You doing your own
thing. It's because we've all got our group of friends from school and from younger ages.
Yeah, and I'm always with them. That's one thing with me, right? Yeah. I've always had my friends from school. I never actually had loads of football mates. Yeah. I was friends with everyone, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have, like, say, he's my best friend in football or anything. I never had that. So as you get older, you kind of just gravitate to who is on the same wavelength. Yeah. And then that's why we're here.
Or who still goes out.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's brilliant. I remember my first England trip.
Go on.
Actually, no, my first one, I got called up for England under-19s. And, you know, like, getting called up, I was actually kicking it from before I got called up for England under-19. But, you know, there was always, like, the ones that are always getting picked from under 15s all the way up to under 19s when it starts to get a little bit more serious. So I was 2083 birthday. So
2083.
1983. I'm playing in the future. I'm in the future. See, look, I'm in the future.
It's early at the moment for us.
It is early. I'm in the future here, though. That's how I think. But 1983, baby. So I was in that group.
3 years younger.
Yeah, so 3 years younger than you guys. But it was, I got to that stage. I don't know. I got it there just through merit because I was scoring goals and it was going well. But they had to obviously eject some players that were always in the group up to that age.
Yeah.
And it was, so I didn't really know anyone in that group when I went. And I had to obviously make new friends and I got going. That was at the under-19s. Then I got promoted to the under-21s because I started playing first-team football.
Right.
And then that's when I met my first under-21 trip. Joe Cole was on it. Was you on it?
I don't know. I didn't last on the under-21s.
No.
I had Harold Wilkinson and I fell asleep in a meeting and things like that.
Oh, my God. What did you do?
Can't just glaze over that.
Howard, what did you do to poor Howard?
Nothing. I just tired. Just fell asleep. The meeting wasn't the most exciting, though. It's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Imagine a Howard Wilkinson.
If you're tired.
Did you ever play with Howard?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
I played a few times under 21s. I can't remember how many.
You didn't play many times, did you? You went straight in because I went. We both went straight in and back, but
yeah,
because you'd already played first team, and when you came down with my group, I was like, wow, big boys are done.
Yeah.
And like, I'm in that group, so am I classed as a big boy? I didn't know, but I was buzzing that you were there. I was like,
who else is in the under 21 team?
Our 21s. Oh God, with Scott Parker, Franny Jeffers, Darius Vassell. I mean, you seems like I played.
Chadwick. Remember Chadwick?
Luke Chadwick was Howard Wilkinson's favourite, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he liked
played
him.
loads.
Yeah.
What's his, Dave Prutton would have been.
Dave
Prutton. He was there.
Another
he was
one
as well.
Prutz was captain, wasn't he? Well, he was my captain.
Yeah, for the younger people, he's the guy. He's the guy on telly that does championship football. He's like the face of championship football.
Yeah, he does the presenting now.
Yeah, he was a good player.
He was steady, like Nottingham Forest, box to box.
You talk to me about Howard Wilkinson before we go back to Colton. I didn't know you fell asleep in the meeting.
We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad. I just fell asleep, man. Woke up.
Is that it? Actually, is that?
I need to know. Like, did you fall asleep? He's doing the tactics, and then you get the red pen in or something.
He lays it in your eyes.
I should be getting woke up.
You got.
Those meetings are so boring.
Was you snoring?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How'd you get
I actually don't know, man. I was asleep.
Because the projector's there, isn't it? So you must have been the back.
I don't even know if there was a projector. He was just talking for a long time.
That's why I love this guy. That's not interested you.
Mate, you sometimes just can't help it.
It's
You're
true.
nodding and you're like, I've got to stay. Well, I've fallen asleep at the wheel before. So.
Have you?
I have as well, to be fair.
Really?
Yeah, I've done that. I wrote off my car.
Oh, God.
Mate, I just saw Sparks and Kai
and it was on the way to a game.
Was it on was yours on the way to a game?
A reserve game.
Who are you,
man?
No. Yeah, it was. Well, not like I do. I fell asleep.
What?
Another thing I did
How do you fall asleep on the way to a game and you're driving?
And because I knew I was tired, I thought, right, undo the window, bit of fresh air. But I chose the wrong music.
What was it?
I put Bob Marley.
Oh,
that's a bad choice.
for disaster.
It's a bad choice.
Luckily, no one else is injured.
Yeah.
Or was I actually? But I remember crashing into Central Reservation.
I done that.
Mirror came flying through the window.
I done that, yeah.
The whole side of the car was.
Really?
Yeah.
I've done that, but mine was worthy.
Really?
Like, yeah. I'd gone
And
a night out.
Right.
I weren't driving to a game where I'm supposed to be awake.
Well, I learnt my lesson. You know what I mean? Now, if I'm driving, I'm tired.
That's a good message. Anyone
so dangerous.
Anyone listening to this, like, if you are don't drive tired, especially
don't ever do it.
Put a dressing room pod on. That'll keep you up. Hopefully, do you know what I mean?
We won't bore you off.
Yeah. And if you do fall asleep while listening to us,
then we've got a problem. But no, so carrying on. So Howard, you fell asleep with Howard.
Yeah.
Did you get in trouble?
I think so, yeah. I might have been sent home. I found vaguely.
You got sent home for falling asleep?
No.
What point at me?
I didn't get sent home. I got a bit of a telling off, never got sent home, but I never think I got called up again afterwards.
Okay.
Oh, was that what it was?
Do you remember?
Not that you was just too good for it?
Before?
No, I basically stopped playing for England 21s, and then I got my full England call up after that.
Yeah.
I remember not getting recalled.
He was a funny geezer, wasn't he? Like, but you know what? What would say about Howard Wilson? The last English manager to win the top flight, the Premier League. The year before it became the Premier League, it was Howard Wilson.
Was it?
Years ago, yeah, with Leeds.
How do you know that?
Mate, Leeds, they were a good team at that era.
You know what? You impress me.
Yeah.
He impresses me sometimes, don't you think?
Yeah.
How does he know that?
I don't know, mate.
Who did they have in that team?
They had
Rio. Was Rio in that team?
David Batty, Gary Speed, Lee Chapman, Gordon Strachan, Gary McAllister. 92. Before that, 5 years. It was
before.
So Lee Bowyer was in that.
No. Before. It's 92. Before the Premier League. Premier League started, I think, in 92 or 93, and it was the 91-92 season.
Oh.
And they won it. And
all the players I'm talking about were miles after. Was Cantona in it?
I believe Cantona may have been in it.
Lucas Radeby?
I don't think even before Lucas.
Is it?
Yeah, it was a proper it was the birth of English football. But anyway, we've gone a bit too serious there. We digressed. I want to get back onto
England.
It's Howard Wilkinson, right? Yeah. So, do you remember this? Because he was quite at the time. Imagine it's 92, so we're sort of 99-ish playing for under 21. So it's only 6-7 years ago from him being the title-winning manager. You know, it's like in 6 or 7 years' time, Klopp taking England under 21s or Pep. So. He was still a big name in the game when we took him. And do you remember he was quite? Do you remember Techno Dave, the geezer who used to get up on the? So
Techno Dave.
No, right. So
who's that?
Tech Man. But he was the first ever Tech Man I saw. Oh. Right. So like nowadays, you go into a club, there's analysts everywhere with their laptops. Yeah. Techno Dave had the biggest laptop in the world. Right. Hefty. I swear he was a hacker. Like you could be out of Eastern Europe, and if you wanted to watch Sky Sports, you'd find it for you. You'd be up there with a coat hanger up in a hotel. He'd get you it, right? It's unbelievable. But it was the first time Howard used to record training sessions. Didn't you remember?
Yeah, I remember that.
And it blew my mind. It was so far forward. Kids might think it's normal now, and it is. But we'd be training, and it'd be really cold, and they'd build a scaffolding next to the pitch.
Yeah, pitch.
He'd get the camera. Techno Dave would be up there on this scaffolding, which didn't look safe, and he'd be swaying like that with the camera. And do you remember this rightly? Howard had speakers on the side of the pitch.
Yeah.
Do you remember? So we'd be doing
so did he start that?
He started all of that, mate.
Because I remember we started doing that at West Ham. I was like, what's going on here?
He wasn't much of a shouter, was he?
No, he wasn't much of a shouter, but it was hilarious because he had the mic on, and he'd be like, Joe, when we don't let cutting, but then he'd be shouting with the speakers, and they'd be like, but then because they were so sensitive, he'd be muttering to himself, bloody useless. And everyone would hear it.
That's brilliant.
I remember that.
So Techno Dave,
I don't know where he is, but he was the first of a kind. He was a trailblazer.
He was.
Like, so I imagine someone going, "What? You need someone who can film something and put it on." That was the first time going England under 21s, because we never did it at West Ham with Harry, where we did like some kind of videos of what we were doing. Like we'd turn up.
I don't think I've done it for any other team. I don't think at all.
I'm like, wow, this is like we're advanced.
Yeah, we're advanced there.
Yeah,
I've seen things that when I go back to the club, they've never seen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I know more than them. But I'm telling you. So Howard Wilkinson is a trailblazer.
Howard Wilkinson was a trailblazer, and I don't know if he's still about, but yeah, he was.
Do you know who was my guy when I
got
called up to the 21s? David Platt was the main.
Yeah.
So Platty. That was that group.
Yeah.
Called up to the 21s. Platty was the manager. Who was in that group? You were, I think, Mickey Carrick,
Scotty Parker, Shalom Yobi, Rice for Sale.
No, Scotty Parker weren't in that one.
No,
he didn't make that. I don't know why he didn't make that group. The Rice wasn't. Who was up front? A few others.
They all got called up the same time as me, I think, with England.
Yeah.
Vassell was round the England squad.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had Franny Jeffers.
Franny
Jeffers.
I like playing with Franny.
Yeah, he's a good player, man.
I thought he was like, because I played, he was one of them, like, people forget about him. He scored, he's 1-on-1 for England.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know, he's top player.
Yeah.
And who else did we have? We had, obviously, Jermaine Defoe was in that group.
Yeah.
Sean Wright-Phillips. Pratton again. Who's the defenders? I think we had Matty Upson.
Yeah, Matty Upson would have been there, wouldn't he?
Yeah, we had Matty Upson. We had
a bit older.
Maybe he was older. Was Matthew Upson older than you?
I think he's a year older than me, or my age.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but it was. We had a good old Matt Dawson.
Yeah, Michael Dawson.
Michael Dawson, sorry.
Yeah.
We had a few other some big boys in that group.
Yeah.
Tom Huddlestone.
Yeah. Well, so you weren't in the system up till 19.
Until
19, 21.
No,
And how was
started
that
going
for you?
bosh.
I mean, like, so explain that. What was it? Did someone from Chelsea tell you got called up, or is it you got a letter?
I remember, man. I feel like we got a letter, didn't we?
Yeah.
Back then, we got a letter. And then obviously the gaffer tells you, you've been called up. You got to go away. You're going here. You're going up to Newcastle. That was the Newcastle.
Yeah, that was the game. Yeah.
Where it was up at St James's Park. We had to win the game as well against Turkey to qualify for the Euros.
We drew.
And we drew.
Did you find with our era? Nowadays, you've got like they're all at St George's Park. They're in from 15, and they're in, and they do loads of camps together, and they get ingrained in what the England culture is. And there's a step.
Yeah.
And the lads, it's a real big. They feel like they're England.
Yeah.
With us, it was just thrown around, and people would come and go. And I don't think and a lot of us were playing Premier League football, all them players at the time. So I don't know about you two, but when I got called up to the 21s, and I'd been playing for West Ham in the Prem, I'd almost feel like I'd love playing for England, but it was a step down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of the lads felt they did a bad job at the time of going, no, this is. If I was in the 21s, I was like, I just want to be there. I don't want to mess about with this stuff. You know what I mean?
No, I get what you're saying, but for me, it was a privilege to always wear that.
Yeah, of course,
whether it was under 21s or first team, or under 19s for that matter of fact. I think I played one under 20 game, but it was just a privilege to put on that strip because you're being recognised for being one of the best up and coming players or one of the best players in the country.
Yeah, and
that's always a privilege. And look, like my son now, he's got called up for Sierra Leone under 20s. He's 16 years old, but I said, when they called him out, I said, go.
Yeah.
Just go and play international football. So you get exposed to different type of players, different type of attackers, because he's a left centre-back or a left wing-back. So it's going to change you and your mentality towards the game, because all you know is English football.
Yeah.
There's a whole array of other styles of play and how people look at the game. And I really think it's important for any young player to expose yourself. Even if it's your mother's country or your grandma's country or your granddad or dad's country, and you're not fully from here, go and explore others. You don't have to always wait for England. I know England is the cherry on the top. After, because that's what we all, when you was dreaming to be a footballer, you always said, I want to make it feel like the first memory you have for England, whoever you played for, like whoever you watched for your first. You want to have that feeling, don't you? What was your first England experience?
I've said it loads of times before. It's actually the reason I wanted to be a footballer was the Italia '90 World Cup, Gaza, because my mum and dad weren't into football. There was no football in my house growing up, but the World Cup just grabbed everyone's. And I remember distinctly working at the fruit and veg store with my dad in Burnt Oak, and he had a bet with someone and he never had a bet, and he never even liked football, but he was into the World Cup.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, England are going to beat Germany. England will beat Germany, and it was 50 quid bet. So back in them days, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of dough.
And I'm like, wow, Dad loves football now as well. So I'm like buzzing with that. And we got it, and the telly was about that big. We was watching it on in the house, and I'm like, I don't want one of them fat ones. Like that. And I'm watching it.
Pull the seats right up.
Gathered round, right? And we had a little fan heat. Well, no, it was summer when it wouldn't have been then, but I was sitting all up like watching it and watching Gaza, and I was just like mesmerised. And I can remember like the nerves in the game. Nearly Prissy Waddle hit the post. I can remember the game, bits of it like it was yesterday. And then when Gaza cried, I don't know why, like it's got to me. Like when he cried, and like I looked around, and my mum and my dad were feeling the emotion of it. Like it got everyone in. And I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah,
and I want to do. That's what I want to do. I want to play for England.
Yeah, because it's affecting everyone around you and who you care about.
That's what it was. I was like, what is this?
It's emotion. Yeah.
And obviously I've been playing football, but hadn't actually played a game, a proper game. I was like, that's
the level.
This is what I want to do. And I was like, wow,
that's amazing. What about you, Bridgie? What was your first England memory? And how did that experience go?
Memory as in like player or as like a fan?
As a kid, like as a fan.
Mate, I don't think as a kid I ever thought like there was a moment where I think, I want to be a footballer. I think I would just, I love football and love playing.
Yeah.
And I want to be a footballer and I want to
What would you have been if you weren't?
Play?
What would you
I
been?
don't know, mate. Who knows? I'll be struggling somewhere. I just think I just always play in the park, and obviously playing. My dad was a Saints fan, so he's pretend to be Rod Wallace and things like that. You pretend to be a player. I
like Rod.
Mate, he was a player, Rod Wallace. I don't think he made a full England call-up, but he played under 21s.
Yeah, the Wallace family.
And obviously I remember, like, I think it was 1980... I think it might have been 1990, actually, with Dad and... like getting the sofa right up in front of the telly and watching it. But I don't think there's anything where I just thought, in my head, I thought, I want to... Really, I really want to play for England. I really want to do this. I wanted to be a footballer because I loved the game of football, but not like kids today where they want to get into an academy or they want to do this. I just played it because you just loved playing the game. I never really... I wanted to be a footballer, but I didn't... Not as much as... Obviously... Not as much what kids are now, where they're from a young age they're just constantly thinking about, I want to be in.
That comes from that comes from the parents, though.
Comes from the parents,
because it's failed footballer parents' dream.
Do you know what it is?
I think the only where it really probably hit me, where I think, I've got to do it or I want to do it, it's now or never, was when I got called up to Southampton at the age of 13 or 14, and it was just like, well, I either go or I don't go.
Yeah.
So I got the chance to go, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I might as well go now.
You're
that good.
Yeah,
you're that good.
Well, I didn't know at the time.
I know.
I've not played with anyone from. I played for Hampshire a couple of times, but I was just playing grassroots football, and it was Mickey Adams who spotted me and called my
Mickey
mum.
Adams, a Leicester manager.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
So he was watching his mate's kid play, and then he approached my mum and dad, and then it was...
That's crazy, isn't it?
Just
and then it was just...
Imagine you just don't even know how good you actually are.
Yeah.
Like, that's the amazing part of it, that you don't actually... See, like when people ask me, when did you know you was going to be a footballer, or when did you decide?
I don't think I
didn't decide. I didn't decide. It just happened.
Yeah.
Like we don't decide these things.
Just keep going.
You keep going, work hard. It's not like I want to be a footballer, I want to be a footballer. It was just like, see what it goes.
Yeah, you want it, don't you? Because you're out playing and you want to win. Playing, you want to. I remember as a kid, like, and it's not like I remember it was last year of primary school, and you had to stand up at this like assembly or at the end of the year, your parents come watch and say what you want to be, and it was like, I'm going to say I want to be a footballer.
Yeah.
The teacher was like, well, you can't say that. It's not realistic.
What's this teacher? Everyone's got that story.
It's not realistic.
Yeah, but it's not one of them moments that stands out for me and goes, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. It's just like, all right. I stood up and went, I want to be CID when because I used to watch The Bill with my mum and dad. I was never going to be one of them, but...
That's unrealistic.
That's pretty more unrealistic,
You're going to be the old Bill. I'm going to be Secret Service. Do you know what, Like, I actually got... Because you see Biggie, Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah.
He's got a song about that.
Yeah.
Saying his teachers have said he'll always amount to nothing and all that. So it's like, but it's true though. Like you shouldn't. I just don't understand teachers back in the day. What was you doing? Like why? Because you failed at what your dream. Don't try and put that on everybody else.
You can understand. Why? No, I can understand why they say it, but not to a kid where you just don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, listen, it is
I don't understand
when you
why
get
they
to a
say
certain age and...
Oh, yeah, if you get to...
Even,
if you're still saying it when you're like 21, then it starts to become unrealistic. Not saying it...
I get why they say it, but also like,
Yeah, mate, I'm with you, like... Mate, any teachers out there thinking about saying that to them, don't say that.
Yeah, don't say it. Keep their dream alive.
You know what I mean? Like, the kids.
Like,
they can be anything they want to be.
Astronaut, footballer.
Yeah, rocket scientist.
Listen, there's only step in if they say what they want to be, like a
murderer.
Step in then. Everything else.
I want to be a murderer. Listen, son, that's unrealistic. Sorry. But it depends. That's unrealistic.
Depends what part of London you're from. This has gone really off piece.
Anyway, that's what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah. So look. So let's talk about my dream and my first exposure to World Cup and Euros.
Yeah.
I just remember. My earliest one, because I never used to really pay attention like that, because I wasn't really into... I shouldn't say it really, because I always preach now, any young footballer that don't watch football, like they're doing something wrong. Well, I was one of those kids because I actually didn't watch a lot of football. I used to love watching Italian football when it came on. When it came on Channel 4. On Channel 4. And there's none of that no more. Listen, TNT are missing a trick, by the way. They should be showing that. They should have... Channel 4 should be tuning into TNT, and getting that back. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that should become terrestrial again. Because that's when that's why I fell in love with Italian football. Ravanelli, Vialli, Baggio. Like,
but it was the characters of the game.
Maldini, like this is and when they scored a goal,
exciting.
Reggie, when they scored a goal, it was like, good! Like, remember the geezer? Yeah, but remember the geezer? He said it. I was like, this geezer's going to run out of breath soon, but he's still going. And I used to love it.
Do you know, I remember that. Do you remember they had the cages up, right? And I used to think, like, they scored. Like, Signori, they jumped on the cage. And the fans were there.
So much passion.
And when I scored in the playground in the cages, I jumped and they see this kid on the cage going like,
oh, mate, I'm telling you, man, like, it's unbelievable. And so that was my first memories. But then talking about the World Cup or Euros even, I just remember Gaza, Gaza against Scotland, when he's got, I think he flicked over Colin Hendry's head and flicked it back, And if we could get this cut out, it's like edit, or if there's no edit, I've done something else. I've done something similar for England, but I didn't score.
Right, okay.
So when he's done that, but he's done it in a different position. Get the cut out. You need to get it. He done it from the left and he scored. Bang, goal. Unbelievable player.
Yeah.
And then it's when he went on the floor.
In his chair.
It was brilliant. That's my main memory. And I was thinking,
we should recreate the dentist chair.
Yeah, we should.
We should next night out.
And then, but I've done something similar to that goal. This is where I came on. Me and Jermaine Defoe. This is a friendly. I think we played Holland first team. Me and Jermaine Defoe come on, and I almost scored with it. Like,
really?
I've knocked it past it with my right foot. It's come on that side of the defender. He's span. As soon as I see his number, I knew I had him. Yeah. Knocked it again on my other foot, and then bang, just from outside the box. Almost scored. I was like, if that goal went in...
Yeah, that's the signature Carlton Cole.
I'm a bit Pele. I am the man. Do you know what I mean? So, but that was... that was my memory. That Gascoigne goal, unbelievable. And that made me feel something. Made me feel something. I was like, I need that.
Yeah.
I want that. You know what I mean? And never scored for England in the end, but it was just, I didn't score. I didn't score for the first team. I scored a bucket of goals for the 21s and the 19s, but first team, I was so disappointed. My debut against Spain, in Seville with Capello as manager. My debut.
I watched the game. I was injured.
Yeah, he was injured. Beckham put me through, and I was like, I think I was in the moment of thinking, wow, that was David Beckham. Like, he's put me clean through it. I've gone around Pepe Reina.
Cheers, Dave.
Cheers, Dave. I'm doing that on the pitch.
In your head, boy.
Mate, listen, mate. It's the load of stuff that goes in there that cannot be explained. It's UFO stuff. It's like it's a mystery. Yeah. I don't even know what's going on. I'd love to. Do you know what? I'd love to break down when I'm in the moment of what actually goes through my head and how I'm going to attack this. It's all split-second stuff, innit? Like, anyway, I've gone around Pepe Reina and I've almost scored, and I've like passed it in basically.
Yeah.
I swear down, the left back, for Spain. I don't even know his name, bruv. Like, it's like he just appeared out of nowhere. He just spawned out of nowhere, and just got into the position, cleared it off the line. I was like, how dare you? That was my time. That was my time to like, it was a statement.
Yeah. Scoring against Spain.
And I mean, like, I was like, oh man, forget about the score, we lost, but it was a moment in my life where it could have just spun everything around, and I could have gone and had a great career for England maybe, I don't know. But when that happened, see this geezer, I need to find out his name, he's cleared. I've never heard of him after that. It's like he was just there for me.
He's sitting on a podcast in Spain going, yeah, when I played for Spain, Carlton Cole went around a keeper and I just spawned. Dealt with him.
That was his best moment in a Spanish shirt. I'm telling you, mate. Like, he just messed up my career, and he's like, I don't know what he's doing now. But anyway, that was favourite moments, man. That was good.
I just want to ask Bridget quickly about, because you scored, didn't you? I remember you. I bet you I can remember your goal, because I remember your game you scored. Iceland.
Yeah.
Friendly.
There's one memory I just got to bring up when you talk about Gaz and the special goals.
Oh, yes, please.
One memory that sticks out for me. David Platt.
Yes.
I can't remember who it was against.
Belgium.
It was an important goal.
Oh, yeah, Belgium.
Second
Mate,
round.
ball comes over and he swivels on the side.
Yes.
Mate, what a goal that was. Wasn't that right near the end of the game? Or was it to bring it level?
I can even tell you
It was to bring it level, wasn't it? Or was it to win it?
To win the game. Send us
through.
through.
Win the game, yeah.
I can even tell you, I think it was Mark Wright, the centre-half from Liverpool, who clipped the worst ball. Like, you know, like when you put in you want to clip a flat ball for the centre forward to head it across and then you score. So they've messed up the free kick, I think. Yeah. And David...
No, you'd say he meant it.
Yeah, David's running, he spun. Oh, beautiful goal. Yeah. I remember, you're right. I remember as soon as that goal went in, run out, got knocked on my mate's door.
Did you see
He said, come on, you. Throw that ball.
No, you weren't doing that.
And he was throwing the ball, and everyone taking turns.
Oh, what a man he was.
Up and down the country.
Imagine that, watching that and then seeing him in real life. And he was my manager with my first England under-21 squad.
Well, the next time we saw him, we was hungover on the way to...
for you too.
He's in the bus with us. We thought we'd lost...
I've got a brilliant story for that one, though.
Yeah?
Oh, David Platt.
But we'll have to...
Eggy Boff.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, we'll get onto that.
Yeah, my goal was against Iceland.
Yeah, I was there. I remember.
Yeah.
Good finish.
It was all right.
Yeah.
I think it might have been a little bit shinny, footy type thing.
What?
But I scored one. Do you know what I mean? Scored for England, so buzzing.
Was it niche and toe?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
After what? Yeah, it wasn't the
good shenanigans.
Right. It went in, mate. It went in. Do you know what I mean? It was
pure
right.
shenanigans.
I think you were playing.
I'm playing.
I can't remember who put me through. Well, you were part of the goal. You had the ball at one point.
It's always part of it. It's number 10.
Might have been, yeah.
Me.
It was like 4-5-0, wasn't it? It was like, yeah.
But my favourite memory probably would have been my debut, though, I think.
Yeah. Against?
Yeah. Holland.
Did you have a stonker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only played... I started and I was... Oh, mate, I played well.
Yeah.
I've played well.
You're humble. For you, do you know what? You're a humble guy. You don't usually say that.
No, I did play well. But I remember I took a bang on my foot halfway through. And I remember coming off at half time, I took my boot off and my toe had just gone pure black straight away. So I broke my toe, basically. So I didn't come out for the second half. But that was in February. And then I ended up going to the
World Cup.
That's
We'll get into that.
I remember the call up. Sven called me. You know, talking about how you get called up. I got a phone call from Sven, but I thought it was a wind up. I ended up putting the phone down.
That's so bridgy.
A wind up, mate.
That's so bridgy.
Oh yeah, good one. There you are.
Yeah, good one, Sven.
Anyway, we'll get back onto that.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Dressing Room with Al Arabiya News.
Rio de Janeiro. It's a chill, fuss-free Southern American city where anything and everything goes. You'll get a taste of the old and the new, fast and slow, and the luxurious and the modest. It is called Cidade Marvelosa to its local inhabitants. It is also known as a super city, with practically more than 14 million people residing in it. It is a city of history, culture, and tradition, as well as hip, flair, and style. The city is known for its picturesque views. The jaw-dropping beauty of the landscape is all thanks to the Atlantic Mountains nearby, with flourishing rainforests. These mountains actually play a big role in the city's population. It makes up most of the area in the south. Relaxed and carefree, Tourists get to go on peaceful nature trips where they can make the most out of the postcard-worthy views. Meanwhile, the north area is slowly getting crowded, with sprawling suburbs rapidly taking over. And the west is quite busy too, with huge malls being built alongside highways and multi-lane roads. But the cool, carefree vibe remains thanks to the beaches nearby. And Rio's golden beaches are a marvel too. But the things to do in the city are endless, no matter the weather, because the city is teeming with infectious cheer and creativity that's definitely attractive for tourists. There's the famous Copacabana, which has everything for you. Like the locals, walk by the beachside in the early morning and sneak in some exercise, or perhaps play some football, enjoy the sunset, or dance to the samba music that's sure to be playing nearby. Then visit the Copacabana shopping district. Take a commute to the town's known historic center, to the city's stunning architecture and structures that won't fail to amaze you. The buildings are known to be influenced by a blend of historic Portuguese colonial architecture. It blends well into Rio's modern city lifestyle and the famous Brazilian atmosphere. Finally, cap off the day with an unforgettable sunset experience. In the early evening, get back near the beach to watch the sun set. Rio is truly a city that's sought after for its tropical weather and laid-back charm, which never fails to lure travelers who decide to stop by.
Hello, I'm Riz Khan. Welcome to the show. My guest this week is a fierce warrior who's conquered the boxing world. Oleksandr Usyk is the WBC, WBO, and WBA heavyweight champion. Last year, he saw off a challenge from the intimidating Tyson Fury twice, and now feels he has just a couple of fights left before he hangs up his gloves after an undefeated professional career. Well, as a proud Ukrainian, he's carried the sporting hopes of his nation during a time of conflict and chaos. As diplomatic moves have continued to find an end to the war with Russia, Oleksandr Usyk joined me for an exclusive interview and reflected on coping with the twin challenges of life both inside and outside the ring. Oleksandr, I'm glad you could give us some time. I know you're very busy. There's a lot going on in your life. Apart from being from a country currently at war with Russia, you're obviously at the absolute top of the boxing mountain. And even Tyson Fury couldn't knock you off twice in less than a year. Now, the WBO has ordered you to begin negotiations with Joseph Parker for a mandatory title defense. What's your response to that?
Yes, our army continues to defend our country, and our guys are fighting for our freedom from the enemy. And I'm grateful to them for that. And I feel that it's impossible to express the gratitude that we all have for what our guys are doing. This is first. And secondly, WBO told us that I should defend this title. But now our aim, the goal of our team, is to unite our belts with Daniel Dubois.
With the possibility of Anthony Joshua getting a shot at Daniel Dubois' world title, how do you think he would do in a potential fight against Dubois, especially after him being away from the ring for a while?
There's always a chance. In the first fight, Daniel was a winner. But it's sport, boxing. If there is another fight, I'm not a great predictor. It will be interesting to see another fight between Joshua and Dubois, a revenge match.
Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois.
Well, Oleksandr, it's reported that your team is keen rather that you fight the IBF champion Daniel Dubois. So where does that possibility stand?
Ми хочемо бій Дюбуа, команда моя готова.
We want to fight Dubois. My team is ready. A lot depends on how God will give us a way to do it. And the second is the person who can do it. It's His Excellency Sheikh Turki Al Sheikh, because he is the person who can organize this fight. Because I think there would be obstacles otherwise. The only person who can organize is His Excellency and the riot season. You know, I always fought on the land of my opponents. At present, Saudi Arabia has created the best environment and organizes fights. So, it has become like my second home. When I box in Saudi Arabia, it feels like home. Great people, great fans. We can go to look around and meet with people. Currently, we cannot host fights in Ukraine, but we can have them in Saudi Arabia. They are very kind to us, so it has become our second home.
Дуже до нас гарно ставляться, і це другий наш будинок.
But Oleksandr, you have said that you probably have maybe 2 more fights left in your career before retiring. Do you stand by that? And who would be the perfect opponents?
На даний момент я не знаю, хто це буде, але так, в мене...
At the moment, I don't know who my opponent are going to be. But yes, I have 2 fights to go in my unbelievable journey. Listen, for over 20 years, no one could organize undisputed heavyweight fight. Saudi Arabia did it. His Excellency has done it, and they can do it again. Fans want to see the fight very much, and I most want to box there.
Переважно я хочу боксувати в Саудівській Аравії.
Now, there is a lot of interest in the public in seeing boxing also being mixed with other fighting styles. And the UFC fighter, Alex Pereira, has expressed an interest in a crossover fight with you. Is that something that interests you as your final fight before retirement, maybe?
Да, мені б це було цікаво, але після...
Yes, I would be interested. But only after the fight with Daniel, to match our belts. I mean, consider the option of fighting in a cage. It's a joke, but every joke contains an element of truth.
Oleksandr, given your remarkable career, is your main ambition to remain unbeaten and unharmed, or is there something else you would like to achieve in boxing?
My main goal is to make boxing great.
Now, as you grow older, how much harder do you have to work at keeping your body at the same level of strength and stamina?
Так, звичайно, дуже багато змін.
Of course, a lot of changes. My team ensures that I have everything for a good recovery and everything for me to handle challenges so that I continue to win.
Перемагати.
There has been more awareness in recent years about the dangers of constantly receiving blows to your head in a sport such as boxing. What concerns do you have, if any, that you're at risk for such kind of head injuries or trauma?
Треба перевіряти.
It's important to check a boxer health, to have a doctor on the team, a team that will continuously monitor body, head, heart, and overall condition. And the athlete also needs to monitor his health very, very, very closely and constantly check his condition. Everything that happens with athletes is the consequences of the mistakes that their team make.
Це неякісний підхід команди і самого спортсмена.
You know, Oleksandr, there are fighters like Tyson Fury. Now he said he's retired, but many people can't stay out of it. If and when the time comes, what will you miss most about the sport once you're retired?
Я думаю, що я буду сумувати за...
I think I will most miss the fights and all the hard work that I have done throughout my life. I think I'll keep training and do training camps with my team to maintain my fitness. Because in the same way you enter a big sport, you should stop in the same way. It's the same as training hard for 20 years to be a good boxer. When finishing your career, you also need training to maintain health and routine. I'll keep making boxing better, and I will spend more time with my children. I'm also planning to have a small farm with chicken, a cow, and some other animals. I will eat fresh eggs for breakfast and will grow berries.
It's wonderful. Now, I was actually in Saudi Arabia before both of your fights with Tyson Fury. We missed the chance to speak with you at the first one when we were there, but got you now. Do you think Tyson Fury will stay retired, or do you think he might return to the ring? I mean, do you miss him? Do you stay in touch with him outside the ring?
Ні, ми не спілкуємося. Я думаю, що ми пізніше.
We don't communicate at present. Probably in the future we will. I'm sad and miss this great guy. Our interaction. We had 24 rounds. It's like a lifetime. Like you live with someone for 20 years, so it's very long road for both of us. It's the same with my unbelievable friend, Tyson Fury.
На тому ж рівні з моїм неймовірним другом Тайсоном Фюрі.
Yeah, of course. It was very well anticipated and people loved the competition you guys had. Now, what do you think of the boxing league announced by Dana White and Saudi's leading sports guy, His Excellency Turki al-Sheikh? Would you compete in Dana's new organization?
Чудова ідея, неймовірна ідея.
Amazing idea. I think His Excellency is doing a lot for the sport. It's wonderful that new initiatives are created, and I support it. Many people think things may not work, but it's important to do new things, always.
Завжди.
Interestingly enough, you've entered the world of Hollywood now, alongside Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for the movie The Smashing Machine. Are you looking to become the next Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe?
Ні, я не думаю, що я майбутній Арнольд Шварценеггер, ні в якому разі. Я не такий моцний, як він.
I don't think I will be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not a solid, but I practice acting. I would like to be in a movie. I see myself in dramatic role. I think I'll be able to act well.
Свого героя, якого б я грав, цікавим.
Well, before you hang up your gloves and go into the lights of the movie world full time, is there any chance you would compete in that boxing league in Saudi before retiring?
Я не проти.
I'm not against it, but I have not been invited to participate in this league. But if such a proposal comes through, my team and I will seriously consider it.
Команди, ми все це розглянемо.
I'm sure if Dana White and His Excellency Turki al-Sheikh are listening, you will get that invite. Now, just a little bit to talk about Ukraine and how the war has affected your life. How has the conflict personally affected the way you live your life and the people you care about?
Слухайте, переживання в нас вмирають.
We are very worried. My people are dying, relatives, missiles are flying over our heads. So we are very worried, and we are helping our country as much as we can. Our country wants peace, prosperity, and development. We live in a war zone, and how it's impacting us. It's very worrying for me, my close ones, and my team. It's horrible what's happening here. People see it on TV, but they still don't get the full picture of how horrible this war is. We're talking right now and the sirens are going off. That means that I must go to a shelter or a basement.
Бомбоубіжище чи в якийсь підвал. Тобто прямо зараз є тривога на вулиці.
Oleksandr, we won't keep you too long, but I do want to ask you, I mean, apart from the pressure of being the world's top boxer, you also have the pressure of being a symbol of hope and resilience for your people. How do you cope with that? How do you manage that during this difficult time?
Я кажу Господу Богу кожного.
I thank God every single day, many times a day. If this second, hour, year God gives me such challenges, that means I can handle them. I say thank you to God for everything I have and everything I don't have, for everything difficult and bad. I also thank Him in my prayers and actions.
За погане, я за все йому кажу дякую. І в молитві, і в ділах.
I wonder, Oleksandr, how your experience of serving in the military changed your perspective on the war and how optimistic you are about the future of Ukraine after the war ends, especially when it comes to rebuilding.
Я дуже оптимістичний, тому що я прям впевнений, що моя країна буде процвітати. Я впевнений, що у моєї країни буде...
I'm very optimistic about the future of Ukraine. I'm sure Ukraine will prosper, it will have a strong economy, a good recovery. Our men who are defending our country and our youth wants to see growth of the country. I'm real optimist. I'm 100% sure that my country will reach a high economic level in the world.
На великому рівні економічному і в світі. Коли я вступив в ТРО...
When I entered the territorial defense forces, it was natural human reaction to be fearful. Missiles and warplanes were flying. We were all scared. But as Ukrainian, as a husband, as a father, I did not consider leaving the country and taking my family. My wife and I agreed straight away that we were not going to leave. What happens, happens. I was praying to God that He saved my family from the bullets and missiles. My team and I took arms and went to defend our country.
Oleksandr, I want to thank you for making the time, for spending the time with us. Stay safe and all the best to you.
Have a nice day. I go to work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Stay safe. A fascinating gloves-off conversation with the incredible athlete Oleksandr Usyk. I'm Riz Khan from me and the team. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
At Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya News. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up in today's programme, The Atlantic magazine reveals fresh details about the chat group on the messaging app Signal, which top US officials mistakenly shared with a journalist. Well, the new details show plans of an imminent attack on Yemen being discussed. Following talks brokered by the United States, Russia and Ukraine agree to halt military strikes in the Black Sea and on energy sites. And Washington says it has scaled back the visit to Greenland by a US delegation. The previous plan sparked criticism and was deemed disrespectful by one Greenlandic MP. Hello and welcome to the programme. The Atlantic magazine has just published the full exchange of messages between senior White House officials. Well, those officials inadvertently included the Atlantic editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, in their discussion on the messaging app Signal. Well, they did so as they discussed planned US strikes on Yemen. Well, initially, The Atlantic did not publish the full details of what it said was highly classified information. However, they appear to have changed their mind after the White House denied that any classified information had been discussed in that chat. Well, speaking to Fox News, the US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz accepted responsibility for creating the Signal group. But as he did so, he continued to discredit Goldberg and his reputation as a journalist.
Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated. It's embarrassing, right. Yes. We're going to get to the bottom of it, but I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone.
And that was the US National Security Advisor. Well, President Trump is standing by his security advisor, Matt Waltz, saying that he shouldn't have to apologize and referring to Goldberg as, quote, a sleazebag.
So this was not classified. Now, if it's classified information, it's probably a little bit different. But I always say you have to learn from every experience. I think it was very unfair the way they attacked Michael. He's a good person. The person that was on just happens to be a sleazebag. So maybe that's just coincidence. I don't know.
President Trump speaking there. Well, there's been a further fallout from European countries to these intel leaks. This, of course, in response to that Signal group chat. Well, on the programme, Good Morning Britain, the British Defence Secretary John Healey was asked for his reaction and asked whether the US could be trusted with intel and classified information. This is what he had to say.
In terms of our relationship, intelligence and defence and security with the US, it's the deepest, it remains the closest of any ally. What it says to us in the UK is a reminder that we need to be, as we are, hot on our own security, on our communications.
The British Defence Secretary speaking there. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Sir Mark Lyle-Grant, who's the former UK National Security Advisor and a former UK Ambassador to the United Nations, who joins us from London. Great to have you with us once again, Sir Mark. We're also joined by Matt Terrell, former Chief of Staff for Marco Rubio's 2016 presidential campaign, now a managing partner of Firehouse Strategies. He joins us from Washington. Great to have you both with us. Let me start with you, Matt. I'd like to ask you, the Trump administration trying to downplay and contain the fallout from the Signal scandal. Now, new revelations have come forward from The Atlantic. How is the Trump administration doing in their attempts to contain this scandal?
Well, I think they're doing a fine job. I mean, look, first and foremost, we saw National Security Advisor Mike Waltz lead on this by owning this. You saw that last night in an interview he did where he owned the situation, took leadership over it. So that's, obviously the right course to take as an administration. Beyond that, according to the administration, they're going to be looking into this. And obviously the goal is to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Obviously it was a mistake, no question about it. But I think in the eyes of many Americans, what wasn't a mistake was the attacks that President Trump launched against the Houthis. Those were incredibly successful attacks. I mean, look, they took out Houthi leadership, they took out, Houthi missile sites, they took out Houthi headquarters. So a very successful attack, and it's all warranted. I mean, look, the Houthis have blocked and been, frankly, very negative. It had a very negative effect on global trade, very negative effect on the U.S. economic security. On top of that, the Houthis attacked the U.S. Navy over 170 times. They've attacked commercial ships over 140 times. So, look, I think the majority of Americans agree that those attacks were warranted. They're the right course to take. They backed the Trump administration on it. I think the vast majority of Americans are more focused on the fact that those were successful attacks and appreciate the administration doing that. And frankly, the rest of this, the administration will work out, and I'm confident it'll never happen again.
OK, let's turn to Sir Mark, and we'll pick up on some of the points you made in just a moment. But Sir Mark, just going back to the way this has been handled, and now in light of these latest revelations from The Atlantic, I mean, how do the new revelations change things as far as how the White House and the Trump administration has been responding to all of this?
Well, I think it's important to say sort of two things at the outset. One, that in the modern era, this sort of informal communication between political leaders on social media, different messaging apps, has become fairly frequent. What is unusual about this episode is the classification level of the information being shared. The other thing it's important to say at the outset is that clearly no serious damage was done to the actual operational success of the military mission against the Houthis. But having said that, it's clearly a very embarrassing episode, as Mr. Terrell says, and there could have been potentially a security risk because what has been shared in this group, this signal group, is exact timings of attacks, types of aircraft being attacked several hours in advance of some of those attacks. And had that leaked to the Houthis, it might have jeopardized the success of the operation and indeed potentially jeopardized the lives of American pilots and sailors. That didn't happen, as I say, but it's obviously a risk. I think the other two concerns that certainly Europeans would have, one is it does show a certain sort of amateurish approach, the fact that this journalist was added to the group and no one seemed to notice. And secondly, of course, you have these offhand, rather contemptuous comments about Europe being exchanged by senior officials in the Trump administration, which sort of reaffirms in European eyes the fact that President Trump and his team don't really appreciate their allies all that much.
Indeed, they were described as freeloaders and pathetic. But just going back to you, Matt, I mean, in terms of the substance of what was discussed there, I mean, how would you classify it? Would you call the sort of exchange, especially the latest revelations we've seen from the Atlantic, I mean, is this sensitive information? Is this top secret information? Is this classified information? Because the Trump administration earlier said none of it was classified. But do you think perhaps they're having a rethink?
Well, look, I think the Trump administration, to your point, has been clear that this was not classified information. That's what they're saying. And I'm going to believe what the administration is putting out there, obviously, in terms of what they're stating on this information. And look, they're going to do, obviously, the course of reviewing this and figuring out exactly what happened here. And obviously, the goal is to ensure it never happens again. You know, I would be assuming that the appropriate reviews will be done. I'm confident that will happen. And of course, you have confidence it'll never happen again, but never say never to anything. The bottom line is there's always situations that can occur. The goal is to learn from these things to figure out, okay, what went wrong? And then what can we do going forward as an organization, in this case, as a White House, as a national security community, to ensure this does not happen again. I think at the end of the day, though, you know, the good news here is that this wasn't classified in the eyes of the administration. The other aspect here is you got to be realistic about the world we live in. You know, it may not be always a situation where you can meet in person. So you're going to have the ability to use technology and other applications. We'll see what the administration does here going forward. Obviously, the goal is to learn from this and then proceed forward and hopefully, of course, not have this happen again.
Yeah, but the administration was saying this wasn't classified until The Atlantic released these latest excerpts of the conversation, which perhaps proved that the administration was wrong in that assessment. I mean, talking about attack sequencing, weaponry, targets, I mean, if that isn't classified, what is?
I'll leave it to the administration to decide what they view as classified or not. Let them speak for themselves on that. I can just tell you, I think, look, the reality is, I think the vast majority of Americans, people around the world watching this, recognize that in administrations, things happen. Obviously, something happened here that should not have happened. And again, it's clear that the administration is working to get to the bottom of it. And it's important to figure out exactly what went wrong here. Let's let the review process take its course and see what comes out of that. But beyond that, again, go back to, we got to be realistic about the world we live in. You know, the reality is technology is not always perfect. Human beings are not always perfect. The goal here should be to learn from this and then proceed forward. But again, I go back to that these attacks were successful. The attacks were not impacted. And these were effective attacks. And I think the vast majority of Americans and people around the world watching it appreciate the administration delivering those attacks on what the administration deemed as a terrorist organization.
Okay, let me turn back to Sir Mark. When you hear officials of this level of seniority in the US administration talking about weaponry, imminent attacks, targets, attack sequencing, I mean, what word would you use to describe it? Would you say it's classified or perhaps something that isn't such a big deal?
Well, by any reasonable definition, Tom, obviously that is classified at the time the communications were sent. Maybe it's been declassified since, and we'll no doubt find out about that. I wouldn't put it in the sort of top secret category, but nonetheless, one can have to say that this is not the sort of information that you would broadcast in advance of a military operation. So clearly, in that sense, it is classified. To me, I'm just a bit surprised that it's not clear that everyone even officially on the group, needed to know in real time exactly what was happening. Normally, that would either be done through the White House Situation Room or something, like we saw when the attack on Osama bin Laden was happening or something like that. You'd have thought that it wasn't necessary for all the people who were there to be kept abreast in live time of exactly what was happening.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask you, in your capacity, Sir Marcus, having been the UK National Security Advisor, I mean, I'd like to get your opinion on Signal as an application. Is it one that people in the intelligence community, as far as you are aware, regard as being trustworthy, a safe sort of an application, bearing in mind that an entire handset can be compromised, and therefore, even if the app is secure, the phone might not be. What do you think about the use of Signal?
Well, Signal is a lot more a secure messaging app than, say, text messages or WhatsApp or something like that, because it does use end-to-end encryption. So it does have quite a lot of protection, and that's why it's become quite a popular messaging app for officials to use. But that does not mean that it's not vulnerable to hostile attack from more sophisticated opponents. I mean, the Russians, the Chinese, others, of course, would be able to crack into these sorts of messages. Now, we don't know whether they did or they didn't, and it wouldn't have made much difference perhaps if they had, given that the attack was on Yemen. But nonetheless, it is more secure than some, but it is not completely secure. And I think, as I understand it, the Department of Defense themselves quite recently said that classified information should not be communicated through the Signal app.
Okay, and Matt, one other aspect about Signal that, might be a cause for concern. Love to get your thoughts on this. I mean, this particular chat was set up to erase the conversation after a matter of days. I don't know how many days, but it was set up. It can be adjusted on Signal in such a way that, the messages disappear. And yet that violates rules about the retention of government records. So I'm just wondering whether you think there has been, where there is a criminal dimension to all of this.
Well, look, I'll let the administration speak for themselves and all that. I'm confident the administration believes that there's not any criminal aspect to this. I'm confident the administration believes that they did all the right things here in terms of how they were conducting communication here, and even pointing to the ways that previous administrations, the last administration, used applications, the Biden administration used applications for communicating. So, look, I think the administration feels confident and clear that they absolutely followed all the right protocol here on this. Obviously, there was a situation that occurred here where the wrong individual got into the application. That was not obviously something that should have happened in terms of the process on these things. And of course, they got to do their course of reviewing that. But I think the administration feels as though that we're living in a world where applications are going to be used. We're in a different world than we were decades ago. It is not always possible to have people in a room discussing things. There are new applications that are now being utilized. Obviously, these have to be applications that are secure, but technology is not always 100% secure, as we all know. And that's in, people in their personal lives and their work lives see that. And of course, here we saw a situation where obviously the wrong individual who should not have been in there got in. That needs to be reviewed. Again, I'm confident they will do the right course here and take the right approach to review this and not have this happen again. But again, there needs to be a recognition here that we are living in a different environment. And the truth is, different applications can be used. And I think the importance here is ensuring that there's secure use of it. But again, we'll have to see how this unfolds with the investigation, if you will, here, or the review by the administration. They're on top of it. They're doing all the things, in my view, they need to be doing in order to reviewing this and making sure that this is a process going forward here that's obviously improved and that this does not happen again.
It's quite interesting that there's been quite so much criticism of the journalist in question, Goldberg. He was dismissed as being a sleazebag by President Trump. We heard a clip before we crossed to you of the US National Security Advisor describing him as, berating his journalistic credentials, shall we say. And yet, they're quite lucky, aren't they, that they stumbled upon a journalist like Goldberg, because he showed some integrity, didn't he, by by coming forward? I mean, he could have perhaps stuck around in that group and learned an awful lot more and revealed that to the wider world. I mean, what are your thoughts about that, Sir Mark?
Well, I don't really have any sort of specific comments on Jeffrey Goldberg. I don't know him at all, but I think it's probably not sensible in the longer term for the administration to shoot the messenger. You know, as you say, it was fortunate in some ways that he acted as honourably as he did. What do you think, Matt? Do you think he acted honourably?
Well, obviously, the right thing to do is not to go out there and release things that could be, you know, things that you don't want out there ahead of an attack, if you will. So, look, I think he did the right thing there. But this is not somebody in the eyes of the administration who's been obviously friendly to them. Obviously, you're seeing the administration had their views and how he has conducted himself here and how he's conducted himself in the past with stories and things of that nature. But obviously, when a journalist comes into information, in my view at least, when a journalist comes into information ahead of an attack that they obviously should not have, obviously the right move there is to not, if you will, go out there and put it to print. Obviously, this journalist now is telling his side of the story. And look, everyone's got to, you know, obviously recognize that this was somebody who should not have been on this application, should not have been part of this. The journalist recognizes that. The administration recognizes that. I think the goal here, obviously, from the administration side, is, as they are rightfully doing, is do the proper investigation, look into it, work as a team to make sure it doesn't happen again, and push forward. And again, I go back to National Security Advisor Waltz has already been taking ownership on this, taking leadership on it. I think that's the right course here in terms of the administration's approach.
Okay. Do you think heads should roll?
No, look, I think the president's been clear he's going to be standing by his team. I mean, I don't think the president's going to be, President Trump has every right to do what he sees fit. I do not believe he's going to be terminating anybody over this. I think they're going to do a review over this. Obviously, up to the president to decide what he does or does not do. That is his decision. But I think he was clear in that meeting that, from what I read out of that meeting that he had yesterday, that he is backing his national security team. I think he has full confidence and trust in his national security team. Obviously, this is something that occurred that shouldn't have happened, but that happens in administrations. Mistakes are made, things happen. And the bottom line here is the administration has been clear that they do want to get to the bottom of exactly what happened. Let's see what they say in terms of the full review on this. Let's let the full review take its course. I think President Trump's going to stand by his team. I think you saw, obviously, as I read what he was doing yesterday in that meeting, doing exactly that. And I think he's going to be standing by his national security team's entire administration. And that's what I think he's going to do going forward here.
So, Mark, one of the revelations we were talking about earlier on was, you know, this idea that European nations are freeloading off the United States, that they're pathetic. I mean, some might say, you know, hard truths and perhaps something that they need to hear. Don't know what you think. But I also wonder whether you think this is perhaps going to prompt a rethink by some of America's allies about how and what it shares in terms of intel. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think so. Look, the UK and the US, as the Defence Secretary said, are the closest sort of allies in intelligence terms and indeed in wider defence and security terms. And I can't see any reason why Britain should withhold intelligence from America because of this lapse. So, no, I don't think there'll be any long-term implications in terms of the intelligence relationship between the two countries at all.
And what do you make of the comments themselves about Europe and what are essentially historic allies of the United States?
A reaffirmation rather than new information of what we've heard publicly. It's not that they're saying something different in public and private. Senior people in the administration, including President Trump himself, of course, have said very much that they think that the Europeans have had a free ride on security. And of course, they're right to some extent. More so for some countries than others, of course. But in general, it is right that Europeans should be galvanized into spending more of their money and effort on securing their defense. It's obviously rather brutal to hear about it in this slightly casual way on a Signal chat group, but nonetheless, I don't think that message in private is much different from the message that all European leaders are getting in public from the Trump administration.
Just turning back to you, Matt, I mean, this is obviously just one secret group on Signal. It's the only one that's known about in the wider world involving senior officials. Do you think there's a chance there are others out there and that there's scope for other breaches?
Well, look, we'll have to see what occurs with other applications. I mean, look, the truth is technology is not perfect. Human beings are not perfect. So who knows what is out there. But I can tell you, I think this administration feels good about the fact that they're following the protocol. I think this administration feels confident that they're doing all the right things in terms of utilizing applications, national security interests, the protection of national security dynamics. And look, obviously, you had a situation here that shouldn't have occurred. Let's let them do what they need to do as an administration to get to the bottom of it. But look, this comes down to confidence and trust. And I think President Trump has full confidence and trust in the team he has on the field. This is a different administration than Trump 1.0, where I don't think he had trust and respect, frankly, of all the people that were in his administration, Trump 1.0. This is a different administration. I think he feels very good about the people around him, whether it's on domestic policy or national security or foreign policy. I think his entire team is a team that he has a great deal of trust and confidence in. And I think at the end of the day, that's what matters. If you trust the people who are in your team, on your team, in your administration, that goes a long way in terms of ensuring all the right protocols are being followed. Again, this was a one-off here. Things happen in administrations. Administrations have things that occur. The bottom line is how you move forward. How do you react and how do you move forward? I think National Security Advisor Waltz did the right thing by taking leadership on this, owning it. I think the administration is doing the right thing by trying to get to the bottom of it and doing their part to get the true answers on what occurred.
And given how damaging that private server issue was for Hillary Clinton when she was running for president almost a decade ago, I mean, there's huge scope, isn't there, here for this to be politicized and used at a later date by President Trump's opponents. I mean, do you think this is comparable in any way in terms of a lapse of judgment and a lapse of security norms and protocols? Matt?
No, I do not. I think many would argue who reviewed and looked at what Secretary Clinton did, extremely different to what occurred with this application. I mean, look, it is clear that the individuals on that application from the Trump administration, at least according to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, we're not aware that this individual is on the application. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz made it clear he didn't even know who this journalist was. He has indicated he never met this journalist. So it's not as if the individuals from the Trump administration on that call were intentionally inviting this person on the call or intentionally trying to do the wrong thing here. This was obviously an error, a mistake. But let's let the administration get to the bottom of exactly how that happened. In the case of Secretary Clinton, I think the reality is many would argue that she knew exactly what the policy was in terms of email. She had not, many would argue, intentionally followed that policy in terms of what should have been done. And obviously, that was a major error by Secretary Clinton. It's something that many Americans, I think, had concerns with. I actually happen to believe it's one of the reasons why she lost the 2016 presidential election. So look, I think these are very different situations. In my view, no question about it. Let's let the administration do what they need to do to get to the bottom of what occurred here. Going forward is what truly matters to make sure that this doesn't happen again in terms of this application. And then, the reality is I think the American people are looking at results. They're looking at what's happening with the recent dynamics around Ukraine and Russia and President Trump trying to get that war to an end. Obviously, they're looking at what happened with the Houthis attacks. With, I think, the American people, I believe the American people have full confidence President Trump did the right thing there. I think the American people recognize that President Trump is trying to get things done. And that's where the American people's focus is more, I think, focused on. What is President Trump doing in office? You're seeing, prices go down. Price of eggs are going down. Price of gas is going down. You're seeing inflation collectively go down. On a foreign policy front, you're seeing, I think, the president have big wins there and at least moving in the right direction in terms of ending wars, ending conflicts. That's what the American people, I think, really want out of President Trump. That's where I think their focus will lie here.
Okay, Matt, you had the first word in this discussion. Let's give the last word to Sir Mark. Anything you'd like to pick up on there? And do you see any parallels between this signal gate, as some are calling it, and Hillary Clinton's private server scandal?
I don't think so, really. I think they're two separate events, and I don't want to get into domestic politics in the United States. But I would say that I mean, one thing that I agree with Mr. Tyrrell when he says that this is a more stable administration than Trump's first administration. By this time, 8 years ago, I had lost my American opposite number as National Security Advisor, General Mike Flynn. He'd already been sacked by the end of March. So clearly there are people around President Trump who he trusts and have faith, and whom have faith in him. and that does make for a more stable administration.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. You've had the last word, Sir Mark Lyle Grant. Thank you very much indeed to you, and thank you as well to Matt Terrell. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Ukraine and Russia have agreed to pause military strikes in the Black Sea and against each other's energy infrastructure. But today, Russia said that some Western sanctions must be lifted before it begins a maritime ceasefire with Ukraine. Well, those demands include revoking sanctions on a Russian state agricultural bank and restoring the firm's access to the SWIFT international payment system. Meanwhile, Ukraine says that Russia launched more than 100 drones overnight, and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that those drone strikes indicate that Russia is not serious about pursuing real peace. Well, on the streets of Kyiv, residents said they have little faith that the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire deals on energy infrastructure and the Black Sea are going to hold. One resident said that negotiations simply give Russia room to regroup and launch more attacks.
No, I think that the Putin is a liar, a big liar. I think it's the biggest liar in the world.
They make it look like they're interested in negotiations and peace because they are in a corner and they need the world to think so, so that they have some room to prepare, to regroup, to plan the new attacks.
Word there on the streets of the Ukrainian capital. Well, let's get some more analysis. We can speak to PJ Crowley, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State under President Obama, who joins us from Virginia in the United States. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've got two ceasefire agreements here that have been agreed by the United States after those talks in Saudi Arabia. One maritime in the Black Sea, the other relating now to energy targets. How significant are these developments?
Well, I think they're potentially quite significant. Energy is a very important element to Ukrainian sovereignty, and the Black Sea is important to the economies of both Ukraine, and Russia. Of course, the devil is in the details, and it's not surprising that Vladimir Putin, who has been just sitting on the sidelines watching Donald Trump give him this, that, and the other thing, is saying, Donald, I'd like to do this for you, but I need one more thing in terms of sanctions. So far, this is a one-way process where Russia is getting a lot and has not yet been asked to give anything significant in return.
I was going to ask you, several concessions to the Russians, anything in return was going to be one of my next questions, but it sounds like the answer is no.
Well, when you're talking about the Black Sea, for example, over the past 3 years, Ukraine, which has no significant navy to speak of, has still been able to inflict significant damage on Russia's Black Sea fleet. So this is profoundly in Russia's interest, to observe a ceasefire, but given the current dynamic, Putin is just trying to get as much as he can, before agreeing to the ceasefire.
Someone we speak to quite often on this channel is a former Putin spokesperson, Sergei Markov, who still seems to very much toe the Kremlin line. He said, from a military angle, the Black Sea initiative looks pointless. There are no battles there, he says. He also says that President Trump needs a success story, and this is a great way of showing that there are some peace initiatives. Do you think he's got a point, and that, for instance, that Black Sea initiative is merely window dressing?
I think he's discounting how much Russia has been impacted by what Ukraine has been able to do, in the Black Sea, without having a real navy to speak of. He's absolutely right that that the dilemma here, as we continue through this process, is it appears that Donald Trump wants an agreement more than the warring parties do, and that's not exactly a winning negotiating strategy.
Yeah, and President Zelensky is saying that the US and the West should actually be increasing and stepping up the sanctions against Russia, not easing them. In your opinion, and I think I know the answer to this, is now the time to be easing sanctions and making these kind of concessions to the Russians?
Well, certainly it is the time to try to achieve a ceasefire and then begin a negotiation, to end the conflict. But when you reach a ceasefire and then potentially a long-term agreement, it has to be something that is sustainable, and it has to be something that Ukraine can live with. And this is the tension that we've seen since Trump, returned to the White House. The pressure has been on Ukraine. There's been very little pressure, on Russia, and it leaves open the question as to what Vladimir Putin is actually willing to do. He actually doesn't probably believe in his own mind that he needs this ceasefire or that he needs to negotiate a settlement. Certainly not on terms that are useful to Ukraine.
So when Ukraine says that Russia is just playing games, and to illustrate that, the Ukrainian president points to the massive drone strikes that were carried out overnight. Do you think all of this discussion and this dialogue oriented towards achieving peace is merely cosmetic?
Well, I do think that, if there is a ceasefire agreement, the parties will try to respect it. But we are a long way from ending the conflict itself. We have a lot of very difficult issues, to tackle. And the dynamic so far would suggest that it's going to be very difficult for the Trump administration to get both sides on the same page.
We're hearing from the Ukrainian capital officials there saying that relations with Washington are, quote, back on track. Judging from the dialogue that we've been given, a party to in Riyadh, what we've managed to hear and understand from what's been discussed there, are you getting that impression as well that, fences have indeed now been properly mended?
Well, I think there's been an attempt on the Ukrainian side, to try to repair the damage of the Zelensky-Trump meeting, in the White House. But the broader reality is clear. Donald Trump values his relationship with Vladimir Putin far more than he values his relationship with Volodymyr Zelensky. And so it remains to be seen, to what degree the Trump administration will be, in fact, an honest broker when it comes to trying to achieve a long-term settlement.
Yeah, a lot of people in Ukraine must be pretty confused because they've gone from having an ally in the form of the United States that supported them almost unconditionally. Now they have an administration in Washington that says President Zelensky is corrupt. They say that elections should be held, suggesting that he's not the legitimate president. They're then saying he's disrespectful, he's ungrateful. A massive change of tack, very difficult for an ally to understand. And I'm just wondering whether this shows to the world and to America's other allies that it's perhaps not as reliable as it might be.
Well, certainly, as we saw in the White House meeting, the president took out his hammer and said to Zelensky, before the media in the room, that he has no cards to play. It's long overdue for Donald Trump to take out the hammer and give Vladimir Putin, the same kind of treatment. So, in a normal negotiation where Putin is just asking for one more thing, the president should express public and private exasperation and really lean hard on Putin to actually respect the agreement that's been negotiated. That's what we need to see. I'm not sure that's what we will ultimately see.
Do you think President Trump would afford President Putin the same sort of treatment as he gave President Zelensky and perhaps humiliate him in front of the world press and shoo him out the door? Is that the sort of thing we might perhaps see next time President Putin goes to the White House?
Given the interactions between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin over the years, I think that's highly unlikely.
Why wouldn't President Trump treat President Zelensky in exactly the same way?
Go back to Helsinki during the first term, where the president all but discounted that there was Russian interference in the 2016 election. Putin assured him that he had nothing to do with this, and he was willing to accept those assurances as opposed to the analysis of his intelligence community. This ship sailed a long time ago. It's unlikely that Donald Trump, who desperately wants a productive relationship with Vladimir Putin, is going to lean as hard as he needs to lean to get Russia to actually do something hard, something difficult.
Okay, so since that disastrous meeting in the Oval Office, the Ukrainians have, come back cap in hand. They've pretty much done everything that was asked of them. They agreed to the 30-day ceasefire deal that the Russians ultimately rejected. But do you think the Ukrainians are doing everything they should? Are you seeing them do everything that's possible for them to do in order to obtain maximum support from the Trump administration?
Well, Zelensky does have the weak hand, and he's trying to maintain the relationship between the United States and Ukraine. He really has no choice. So I do think that Zelensky is cautiously trying to do what he can to bring Trump back on his side. But again, if as we get into the bare knuckles aspect of this, Trump has to be as hard on the Russian side as he has been on the Ukrainian side. I think Vladimir Zelensky it's fair for him to be skeptical that Trump is going to be, the even-handed negotiator that will ultimately protect not only America's national interest, but Ukraine's national interest as well.
Just to sort of wrap things up, I mean, are we looking at a scenario in which we are closer to peace now as a result of this recent dialogue between those three parties than we were, say, a week ago?
I think it's useful to get these partial agreements. I think we have a long road, to get to something that is, stable and durable, and actually solves the problem that we face in Ukraine.
And with Ukraine obviously being perhaps the most important issue under discussion between the Russians and the Americans, but not the only thing. I mean, are there any other achievements that you would give due credit to the Trump administration for having extracted from these talks between them and the Russians?
Well, look, this is a multi-sided process, and even if we can congratulate Trump and Zelensky for getting a negotiating process started, we can and should be critical that at the same time, the Trump administration is destroying the transatlantic relationship, not only by keeping Europe on the sidelines of this negotiation, but now we see in the other big story, of the disdain that the Trump administration has for its European allies, that ultimately, even if you negotiate an agreement on paper, who's going to enforce it? The Trump administration is going to have to rely on European countries, to carry the heavy lifting here. And if you're undermining that relationship, you have to question exactly, what will be achieved, even if there's an agreement on paper.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Always a pleasure. PJ Crowley, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
You're welcome, Tom.
Now, the US President Donald Trump on Monday reiterated his suggestion that the United States should take over Greenland. Well, that's a proposal that's been flatly rejected by Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. Well, she called the suggestion unacceptable pressure on the semi-autonomous Danish territory, particularly coming ahead of an unsolicited visit from a high-profile US delegation, which includes the US Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife, Usha Vance.
And repeat after me.
The visits by Americans can be viewed independently from the statements and reports we've heard from the American side, clearly starting from January and continuing to present day. It is now evident that this visit is not in favor of Greenland, and therefore I must say that the pressure being placed on both Greenland and Denmark in this case is unacceptable.
Well, while Danish politicians were suspicious about the visit, the US Vice President J.D. Vance justified the trip, which he's going to be making alongside his wife, Usha.
Hey guys, it's J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and you know there was so much excitement around Ushak's visit to Greenland this Friday that I decided that I didn't want her to have all that fun by herself, and so I'm going to join her. I'm going to visit some of our guardians in the Space Force on the northwest coast of Greenland and also just check out what's going on with the security there of Greenland. As you know, it's really important. A lot of other countries have threatened Greenland, have threatened to use its territories and its waterways to threaten the United States, to threaten Canada, and of course to threaten the people of Greenland. So we're going to check out how things are going there. And I say that speaking for President Trump, we want to reinvigorate the security of the people of Greenland because we think it's important to protecting the security of the entire world. Unfortunately, leaders in both America and in Denmark, I think, ignored Greenland for far too long.
The U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance speaking there. Well, his wife had been scheduled to watch a popular dog sled race there in Greenland, but that's been cancelled, and she will instead only visit the U.S. space base at Pituffik. Well, Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has welcomed this U.S. decision to alter the itinerary of the planned visit. He, too, believes that, quote, unacceptable pressure is being exerted on his country. Well, for more, we're joined now by Carla Sands, the former U.S. ambassador to Denmark, Greenland and the Faroe Islands during the first Trump administration. Great to have you with us once again, Ambassador Sands. Just want to start by asking you about this rethink of this U.S. delegation visit to Greenland. Why do you think there's been a change of plan?
Well, clearly because Denmark is trying to gaslight these poor Greenlanders. I think they're giving Greenlanders Stockholm syndrome, where they're getting them to identify with their oppressors. And it's an old, sad story. Usyk Vance was going as a senior diplomat from the U.S., the vice president's beautiful, young, accomplished wife, to go and join the Greenlanders at their biggest event of the year, their big dog sled competition. And that was, for the Greenlanders, a diplomatic coup. Every country wants to have visits from high-level American diplomats, especially from the administration. So what Denmark is trying to do is create tension between the U.S. and Greenland, and right now they're achieving it. But remember, Denmark, their vested interest is to hold Greenland in their control, although they have never developed it and can't afford to, and are not able to defend it. So there's a huge loss here for Greenland, and shame on Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen.
But there is a bit of a break with protocol and diplomatic norms, isn't there here, Ambassador? I mean, ordinarily, such a high-profile visit involving someone like the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife would come with an official invitation, and this one did not.
Oh, no, no. When American high-level government officials want to visit a country, the U.S. embassy, and in this case, the consulate, would spin up to support it. They would let the government know. The governments are always thrilled to have U.S. people, high-level visitors go, because what it does is it strengthens the relationship, and it often brings with it benefits. For instance, increased trade, increased security cooperation. There are always goodies that come with visits. That's just how it works diplomatically. And so it's a great loss at this moment, but I would say this is a tiny bump in the road. The Greenlanders haven't even heard the first offer from President Trump in increasing the relationship. Denmark's going to lose in this. Is it today, or is it 2 or 3 or 5 years from now? I don't know. But Greenland's going independent in spite of what Denmark is doing, trying to lash them to them in a losing proposition for the Greenlanders.
So you're saying that basically Greenland has to choose, that it's got to be under the umbrella. As you say, there's only, 57,000 people that live in Greenland. Without the sort of the security umbrella, whether it's provided by Denmark and the rest of Europe or the United States, Greenland cannot be entirely independent. Is that what you're saying?
Well, Greenland can't be entirely independent because they have no defense. They have zero defense, and they're not able to support themselves. They get about $600 million a year from Denmark in welfare transfer. So since Greenland cannot be independent, it needs, I will say, an association with another country. Denmark is not able to develop Greenland and to give Greenland what it wants, which is financial prosperity. It just gives them welfare, which keeps them on the dole, kind of like a poor person that never achieves their potential because they take a little allowance. But they also, Denmark cannot afford, it's not capable of defending Greenland, nor, I will share, is Europe capable of defending Greenland. Europe is not even capable of defending Europe without the United States. They don't have a capable military in spite of NATO. I mean, it's a great alliance, but Europe has a long way to go to actually be capable of being in a conflict without the United States support.
So do you think, you know, when we're talking about support and the security of Greenland, do you think that the main threat here, I mean, we haven't mentioned them by name, but we might as well, is it Russia and China that would otherwise want to get their hands on Greenland if it's not the United States?
Yes, Tom, that's correct. For instance, in the past, China tried to bring Greenland into their Belt and Road Initiative back in 2017. Now, the allies were able to turn that off. But as a matter of fact, Greenlanders have told me money has no color. They just want development. They just want prosperity. They want success in their tourism. They want to be successful in their mining. They want their people to benefit financially from this. They haven't to date. Now, when I was the U.S. ambassador, I was able to put a consulate in Greenland. I was able to get trade and cooperation agreements with both with Greenland and the Faroe Islands. And what that did is it helped us give funds, for instance, from the State Department to help them with their mining, help support their tourism development. But there's still a long way to go. American companies will go in and invest in Greenland with the backing of the U.S. government. We have tools, things like XM Bank, Development Finance Corporation. We need those to help companies risk in places like Greenland. But the fact is, Greenland needs to be defended, number one, and it's not secure. Russian subs, Russian ships, cutting those undersea cables, China ships. There's a lot of Chinese activity in coordination with the Russians now in the region, and this is all open source. You can go and you can look up and read about it on your own. China has true domination plans for both poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic. So we have to pay attention to both poles. But in my case, where I worked was in the Arctic and subarctic region, and there's the seas around Greenland. So it's not just the body of land, it's the giant GI-UK gap. And that means Greenland, Iceland, and the UK.
So why doesn't Greenland fall under the, well, I think it does. So, I mean, Greenland does fall under the NATO security umbrella because it's, as things stand, it's part of Denmark. It's an autonomous region. It's protected by NATO. So why the need to protect Greenland from those other powers by the United States when, in fact, it's already protected by the United States and all the other NATO members, isn't it?
No, it's actually Denmark's responsibility. So NATO has these articles, and Article 3 in the NATO Charter is that every member nation has the ability to defend their own territory. That's Article 3. Denmark does not have that ability to defend their own territory. So they're already breaking Article 3. Article 5 is that the NATO allies come to the defense of their other allied nations when they're attacked. But NATO doesn't have the capability to actually be there and be elsewhere where we have real issues like the South China Sea, for instance, or other areas where there is active aggression by, for instance, China. NATO is a wonderful alliance, but the European allies still, like I said earlier, have a long way to go. They're not bringing in enough young military men. They're not training them. They're not training enough military men, young-aged men. There's a lot of older military members in a lot of these NATO military, whether it's the Navy or the Army in those countries, Air Force. We need young fighters, and then they need the equipment, and they need to refresh the equipment. And there's a lot of old, broken down tanks and equipment sitting in many NATO allied, store yards where they need to be refreshing that equipment, and they're just they're not doing it.
You're ambassador to Copenhagen, which of course covers, that ambassadorship included Greenland and the Faroe Islands. You were there from the years 2017 to 2021. And during that time, during the first Trump administration, he did tout this idea of a Greenland takeover or buying Greenland. Internationally, there were, quite a lot of headlines mocking that idea. But what did people say to you in Denmark behind closed doors about that?
Well, so President Trump was the third U.S. president to make this proposal that we would buy Greenland. And it's going to look different than buying. There's many ways to associate Greenland. For instance, a COFA, like a free association agreement, like Micronesia or Palau. There are other ways that we can have Greenland come under our security umbrella and still be a completely independent country. And I don't speak for the Trump administration. I just speak from my own personal experience as ambassador. And the Danes are very threatened by the idea of the United States bringing Greenland closer into their security umbrella. The most important thing is that this area is secured and doesn't fall into enemy hands. And that's really the threat. And when Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, speaks the way she does, it's very dangerous talk because what she's doing, she's making Greenland more vulnerable. The Greenlanders want security and they want prosperity, and they don't really care who's going to do it. And so we want to become closer with Greenland, and we want to be their partner of choice. That is so important for the security of the world. We do not want Greenland to fall into Chinese hands. And how easy would it be? Very easy. And that's why President Trump is moving as quickly as he is. And Mette Frederiksen, if she was smart, she would pick up the phone and she would call President Trump and she would work out a deal today.
Yeah, but what about the Greenlanders? You say they don't really care, but they obviously do, because a new opinion poll, the latest opinion poll I saw said 85% of Greenlanders, specifically, 85% of 57,000 people do not want to be part of America. So why should they be?
Well, so they can stay Greenlanders and have all of the Greenlandic law and Greenlandic independence that they want in an association with the United States. The fact is, they're very upset with Denmark, but Denmark, by doing this gaslighting and creating this Stockholm syndrome among the Greenlanders, Denmark in this case is not to be trusted. So Denmark, their university, paid for that poll, and that poll was skewed so that they would get the election outcome that they wanted. They want Greenland not to go independent. I promise you, Greenland is going independent. So since that is what Greenlanders want, we want to make sure that when Greenland goes independent, that they are in the Western circle and not in the arms of China. We want to make sure that they are part of the orbit of the West. That's why President Trump says having Greenland in the U.S. security net is important for the U.S. security, but it's also important for world security. If there's a conflict anywhere and the U.S. needs to get to Europe, Greenland is on the way. And so we need to make sure that Greenland, with its great people, they're wonderful people. They have a wonderful culture that's similar to the American state of Alaska. They have the opportunity to become very wealthy. Our U.S. state of Alaska has a sovereign wealth fund that's been built over generations. Their mining proceeds go into that sovereign wealth fund, and every Alaskan benefits from checks from that sovereign wealth fund. Well, that's what we were hoping to build with Greenlanders, and it's still possible. I think good things will happen between the U.S. and Greenland, but Denmark is going to try to muck up the works and ruin the relationship.
Okay. Well, President Trump is, however, refusing to rule out the use of force to bring Greenland into the U.S. orbit, whatever the future arrangement looks like. What kind of a message does that send out to the rest of the world about, territorial expansion? And doesn't that just give carte blanche to other world leaders to help themselves to bits of the globe that they have the military upper hand over?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's provocative. However, anyone that knows President Trump knows that he's the peace president. He doesn't want war, but he's also the author of a book called The Art of the Deal. He wrote this book decades ago, and I'm sure he would never take anything off the table before a deal is negotiated. That's the best place to start, right? You don't start by negotiating against yourself. But President Trump is actually the first president in, I think, 80 years that did not start a new foreign war. He is the peace president.
Okay, well, let's hope he isn't about to start one there in Greenland. Thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. Former US Ambassador Carla Sands, thank you for your time.
Thanks. Great to talk to you.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.
At Al Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics, and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake, and artificial intelligence,
They've got to have a vote and a say.
it's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
My campaign is going very well.
presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on The Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation. In 2018, Maria Butina was convicted of working as an unregistered Russian foreign agent in the US. She was jailed and then deported to Russia. Butina has always denied being a Russian spy, and at the time, President Vladimir Putin said he had never heard of her. Well, she now serves as a parliamentarian in the Russian State Duma and is a supporter of the Russian military offensive in Ukraine. Maria Butina, good to have you on the show. Now, let's start with the latest developments in Ukraine. Following the recent round of escalation and the warnings issued by President Putin, do you fear the world is now closer to nuclear war than at any other point in your lifetime?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't been in other points of our world's life, like the Cuban Missile Crisis or Caribbean Missile Crisis, depends, where you live and how you call it. But I think we are now in a quite low point of the relationships between Russia and the West, and that's put the whole world in the danger.
You know, the numbers of casualties are difficult to calculate, and they're disputed by both sides. But after the 1,000-day milestone was passed, how are the Russian people managing to accept the losses of their sons, and do they clearly know what the sacrifice is for?
They absolutely do. And I was elected from a small region, Kirovska Oblast, which is located in about 1.5-hour flight from Moscow. And I should tell you that we're all united and we help to the front lines, and we cry for those who are, lost their lives, sacrificing them for our motherland. But we all understand that this is a necessary thing to do, because we are trying to help to the Russians in their new territories, Russian new territories, that's first. And the second, which I view very, very important, we actually are fighting for survival of Russia and the whole world, because we see that Nazism in a full scale is back, and we have to stop it. We absolutely have to stop it.
There are arguments put forward, though, that the Russian people don't necessarily know the full story because of the control of the media there. How can Russian people make a clear decision if they don't have a full idea of what's going on?
come on, they have quite a full idea what's going on, because, you know, you can go on Telegram channels and you read a lot of stuff from both sides, and people understand what's going on. And even if little villages, people don't rely on TV anymore that much. Only 50% of Russian population is TV watchers. Most of them actually go on social networking and they talk to each other. And you know, you cannot hide the truth. And the truth is that SMO should have been started, because NATO was coming so close to our borders that it would put the whole world in the actual stance of the Third World War. So we were protecting Russian-speaking population, and we absolutely understand how important it is to make a step forward today. So people do know the truth and they see the truth. And people who come back from the front lines and they're on their vacation, they tell the truth, that how horrible actions are committed by what horrible crimes are committed by the Ukrainian forces that are joined by the NATO forces. Well, we didn't place NATO next to our borders. NATO placed themselves, and they broke their promises. Well, all Russians know it. So we're kind of, you know, smart and intellectual to be able to find out what is true and what is not. And people do it and manage it very well.
And of course, there are accusations from both sides about abuses on the battlefield. But as the new administration comes into the U.S., eyes are turning towards a peace deal. I want to get your perspective on what you regard as a fair peace deal to end the war.
I don't know. Look, first of all, I don't know if the U.S. administration, the new one, is actually credible in terms of what they say and what they do. Because the last time when Trump came to power, I was living in the United States those days, and then they made me to serve prison time for actually peace building in the U.S., and Trump was in charge. So he was promising to make good relationships with Russia, but in fact, we had more sanctions and more diplomats expelled, and people were more and more distant, removed from each other. I mean, the U.S. people and the Russians that had ever been. So they say they want to stop the conflict. Do they really want to do so? I don't know. And for right now, I do believe that the U.S. is way more focused on the Israel-Palestinian situation than on Ukraine and Russia, because they clearly understand by now that Russia is going to win. There is no options, and the people they know the truth, and they're gonna fight until the last breath. I mean, the Russians, and Ukraine will lose. There is no other way. And additionally to that, now there are so many people fleeing the West, moving to Russia, that you have to be blind not to see that not just the war on a war field is lost by the West, but they also lost the war for the minds and souls of people if they're moving to Russia. Well, I know I handle this program in the Russian parliament, and I can see every single day more and more people come in with families. They just hate LGBT stuff, and they want to live and raise their families and kids in a peaceful community which they view Russia. So we struggle now how to get so many people in, because they come and there are a lot of them, and they're investors and they have money and do all this stuff. So it's quite surprising for me. But it means the West lost the battle for the souls and for the hearts of the people as well.
Well, the report of there haven't been many reports in terms of people moving to Russia on the Western side. Perhaps that wouldn't be surprising. But either way, both Presidents Putin and Trump are regarded as tough negotiators. Who do you regard as the stronger of the two? And do you expect any compromise from President Putin on his objectives?
I expect not a compromise, but I expect a consensus. I mean, I expect both sides to focus on what is profitable for each side, but not on the losses and compromises of which one. And I do believe that this is the only way how to negotiate. Well, first, number one thing that the US should do, they just take their selves out of Europe, because that's not their land. That's not their decision. That's not their solution. There is not their land. They had to get out and let people, Europeans, to decide themselves how they want to live, because they now press every single country in Europe, all the countries, to just follow their will, but they shall not have any power here. There is no reason. and they're just, flooding Europe with their money and trying to buy politicians. That's what, in fact, they do. And that's not the peaceful negotiations. Whom to negotiate with? European countries, including Ukraine now, they lost their sovereignty. They cannot just freely talk anymore, which means that if you want a peaceful, a good deal, the US should step back and realize that this is not their land.
Let me get your perspective, Ms. Butina, on how life has changed for ordinary people in Russia since the war began. How have the economic sanctions been felt? What impact are they having?
Well, we have full grocery stores. We don't have any problem central heating. We don't have any skyrocket prices. We're actually fine. The main thing that changed, and this is absolutely true, that we're all now stand together side by side, because any time when in Russia some external force is trying to push us, we become more and more united. That's what happened. So now I see a lot of patriotism in Russia, because we know that we have to be close to each other to stand against NATO. Like, that's not a secret anymore. There is no just Ukraine. This is now NATO fighting by Ukrainian lives. That's how it's called, which means that Russians do know, do understand, and they stand by side. And now we are welcoming new foreigners who come, join us and help us. This is what's going on. This is the average mood in Russia. Yes, the hardships, but we used to live in the hardships. Look, they had it during their Second World War, the Great Patriotic War. And yeah, we know how to sorrow, but on the other hand, this is how we used to live. So by external pressure, you cannot conquer Russia. Our empire has been lost for the last ages and ages, and will stand ages to come. It's one of the longest standing empires in the world, multinational. So we're going to be okay. Hard times, but it will make us stronger.
Well, so presumably the reports of increased inflation must be having an impact on the day-to-day lives and will start to test the will of the Russian people.
I don't think so. We have challenges on our will every single day, and because of the living and the weather conditions. So we're kind of used to go through hardships. But talking of inflation, yeah, there are hard times. People understand that, and they just work hard. And actually sanctions open new opportunities for us, because the companies that used to be very small now became big, because now we don't have Western products and they have to take the market, and they love to take the market share. And we have a lot of partners in the BRICS countries that help us, and they want to trade, and we explore new brands. So we don't suffer at all. Meaning that it's not just the US who produces all the things. It's not just Europe. Europe needs Russia because of the gas and and oil and all this stuff. Russia has all the resources in the world. Why would we suffer?
Ms. Butina, I'm just looking at your past, and you lived in America for a while. Of course, it was a difficult time for you. You're accused of being a Russian operative and so on. But are you personally surprised or even saddened by the state of relations between Russia and America? And how do you think the ordinary people in both countries reflect the views of the leadership?
I am sad, because when I came to the States, I expected the American dream to be like we saw in the Hollywood movies in the 70s and the 80s. I expected conservative America, and I expected people who just, have one wonderful yard and they have wonderful families, and America has none of that. Like, not anymore. It's just they lost the country. And now all of that I see here in Russia. And it's just, the world is upside down, indeed. Do I think that people actually share the views of the US government? Well, I don't know, because I see so many people moving from the States, and they hate the government. Well, and they don't like Russia maybe necessarily, but they don't hate us, because people are people. And I actually serve time for having friendship dinners that were paid, by the way, by Americans. And I don't know why I became a Russian agent then, but anyway. So, and the friendship dinners just showed that people want to talk. That's why I support now the civil diplomacy. Well, I did serve time for civil diplomacy, but I was and I am a peace builder, and I will do it in the future, because I believe, and you're absolutely right, if people talk to each other, they don't hate each other. And this is the only way how we can never, ever have the Third World War, because that's my great hope. I don't want any serious conflict between Russia and NATO, because, you know, the whole world will suffer.
Well, you know, you obviously must have made friends during that time in America. As you said, you had dinners with them and so on. In spite of your conviction as an unregistered operative in the country, do you have any particular regrets? And are you still in touch with any of those people?
Yeah, actually, yes. Some of them incognito, but they come here to Russia. It's very sad that we cannot communicate so much because they're afraid of the US government, that they're going to reach them and, you know, cut them and throw them in prison because I'm under sanctions. And so I don't want to put them in danger as well. But they do travel here because this is friendship. Friendship is eternal. Love is eternal. These are the values that the US lost, but there are still people who are like this. And no, I do not hate the United States. I do not hate Americans, because if I do, it means that the bad guys win. So I don't want them to win. That's why I stay faithful. I believe in God. I am conservative, and I will fight for peace until my last breath.
Let me ask you, you know, as in the conversation, you always denied being a Russian spy. So what do you think was the reason the justice system there pursued the case and put you in jail? Was it bureaucracy, do you think, or do you think there was a political reason behind it?
I was never accused of being a spy, okay? That's in the first place. Never. It was in the media. It had never been in my conviction, had never been even filed as a paper. And they needed a scapegoat. They needed someone physically to actually arrest at the day when Trump and Putin met. Look at the day of my arrest. Do you think it's a coincidence? They arrested me exactly when President Putin and President Trump were first time to meet, sit in front of each other, and they have this very, very loud case. Because somebody in the US, they don't want peace. They want war because they earn on wars. The private military companies are earning a lot of having wars all over the globe. Question is to us, to Russia, to Europeans, Arabs, Chinese, and all other countries. How long are we gonna let them do that? Are earning money on our life losses? I don't think that's smart. So they needed a scapegoat. They got a scapegoat. And look, if they would have even one piece of evidence that I am a spy, would they let me go in 18 months? No way. I would serve 35 years now, but there was nothing on me. Absolutely nothing. That's why they just wanted a public case and just throw me out of the country, claim I'm the national security threat. Yeah, you can see I'm very much a threat. And then just, you know, make it, and they're still having fun on my case, saying like, oh, look, if she met someone, that means she, you know, had relationships. They never ever shown one picture. And as a woman, I'm deeply insulted by that, because they were claiming all my this relationship with someone. There is no one picture being made. Isn't it suspicious? Well, because it had never happened. This is a fictitious, fake case. This is how Trump says this is fake news.
Well, either way, they put you in prison. Didn't that change your view of the United States at all?
No, no, because people are people, and corrupted guys in the government are corrupted guys in the government. And, you know, one thing has changed in me after prison and during my prison time. I spent 4 months on solitary confinement, which is against all the conventions against tortures, but don't forget about it. I found God, or God found me, I don't know. But I know one thing, that I shall not hate, and I do not hate. I forgive them. It doesn't mean I should forget, but I forgive them. So, and the bad guys, they will pay their price, because you know what? God is just. This is what I believe. I don't need to do any revenge on them. No, that's not my job. God will do everything. And all the people who acted badly, they will get their punishment no matter what. Even if we do nothing and just sitting and watching that, the justice is going to get.
So if you have moved on, but, you know, don't you really want to clear your name officially in the US?
I actually tried. I filed an appeal case, but the problem is that when you're sentenced in the US, you lose your right to appeal because you sign a special paper, or they don't sentence you ever. That's the law. That you're you know, you cannot appeal and you don't want to appeal, which is maybe sad. And I was very excited when Duran's report got out, because there is nothing on me there, because that was the case that they actually based my conviction of, meaning the money that supposedly went from Kremlin to Trump, and then look at the Durand report, there was no money. The question is, why did I serve my time? So would I try to prove that I'm not guilty in the US court now? No, because it's corrupted. It does not make sense. I'll just lose money. In the future, maybe. Well, yes, it's insulting that my name was placed in dirt, because I'm from a family, a very distinguished family of teachers, and I'm a teacher by myself. I've always been a peace builder, and I teach kids. And now kids look at me saying like, oh, this is a, whatever they call her, a Russian honeypot. I've never been. And this is an insult, but there will be a day. I know there will be a day. And the history will place everything on its deserving spots.
Well, of course, when you were deported from America to Russia, in the American eyes, you were seen as a spy. I'm curious, how were you regarded in Russia? I know Vladimir Putin said he'd never heard of you at the time.
No, well, he mentioned my name a couple of times, but why should he? Meaning, I was just a student. That's the thing. I was just a student. Yes, my country fought for me because I'm a Russian citizen, and now I am having this parliament position of fighting for those who are oppressed and are in the prisons because they are Russians. There are a lot of them. And every single person here will stand for a Russian because, we know that tomorrow you will be at this spot. And, well, I do my job here. I'm a lawmaker. I help to people who move into Russia from the West. That's my responsibility today, and I'm very excited to do so. I do have a lot of work. No weekend, no vacation, not because I'm suffering, but because I love my job. That's why, because I love helping people. I used to be a peacemaker. I love helping people. That's what I do today. I help people in prison, and they put me on solitary again for that. I don't care. I know what I do, and I do it for God. And people will do no harm for me because God is with me. Who are people if God is with me?
Yeah, I was wondering about your visit to the Russian opposition activist Alexei Navalny in jail when he was on hunger strike. Why did you do that, and what did he say to you?
He was complaining that he has so bad conditions, so I wanted to check. And I went there, and I saw that he's lying. And I said straight to his eyes, and unfortunately, he didn't grant a permission to show the footage of what he was talking to me. He called me, well, I won't pronounce it because I'm a woman and I don't want this to be, public again, but he called me very bad words that is, I think, inappropriate from men to say to a woman, and it's unproven. He just repeated the US claims. It was insulting, but anyway, that was not my goal. I told the cameras and the camera crew from the very beginning, because look, I almost died. I went through tortures. I know what tortures are. And if I see just a sign that he's like that, I would stop it, because I would never let my country do what they did with me in the US. I lost my health. I lost my reputation, everything for doing nothing. So when I went there, I just wanted to ask how he's doing. And if he needs any help, I do help people to prisons all the time. But he was just fine. He was just cursing me out and just wanted to have, PRI on everything. And I don't know why he did it. I don't know, because I am happy to help. And it doesn't matter if you're an accuser of me, if you're, my former FBI agent, I will always help. That's my nature. And it was so horrible and painful that he was just, I don't know why he did so. I mean, I can see some of his mind.
Based on what you just said, Ms. Butina, considering his reaction to you and you were surprised by his very negative behavior with you, first of all, were you surprised when he died in prison? And secondly, having found religion, did you pray for him? Because religion involves forgiveness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every single moment. And actually, when he got sick first time after that plane flight, that was, and God will judge me if I'm lying here. Because the first thing there was a COVID time, and I remember it was in my apartment, and I was praying hard, so he gets through it, and God gave him another chance, and he went through it. And the second time, the same. I will pray especially for people who hate me, especially for people who curse me out because I am a Jesus Christ believer. That's it. You can't change it. Well, you can't explain it for a person who is non-believer, but absolutely yes. And again, if his wife tomorrow shows up and she needs my help, I will help. If tomorrow people who curse me out and, place me in prison, throw me on solitary are going to pray for my help, I will pray for them and I will help because God says me to do so. It's in the Bible. I will follow the Bible because I know that this life now is nothing comparatively to what is ahead. So I it's hard to explain the face. It's just, it is. I'm helping now here. We have a group of traditional Catholics that were, in the US called domestic terrorists in the FBI note, and many of them now moved to Russia. I am a Russian Orthodox. Why would I help them to establish here a church? They are legal now, they're registered, it's all okay. They have a little chapel now, but I want for them better conditions. I'm not Catholic, why shall I do so? Because I'm Christian. Okay?
Well, so,
help to a Muslim, to a Christian, to anyone who needs help.
On that note, I wanted to touch a bit on your work as a politician in Russia now, and you've touched on this issue of helping people to resettle from the West into Russia. I'd indicated earlier it's not something widely reported in the media in the West, but how important is that as a project for you, and what's your real motivation for doing it?
Well, my real motivation is to help people because nothing makes me more happy. Well, you can call me selfish and egoistic, but that's what gives me joy. Helping others. When I see all these families setting up and having their houses and having jobs and their kids, step by step learning Russian language and, telling me stories about their own culture. I have this wonderful, fantastic family of Joseph Schutzman. He's an American who moved to Russia recently. He has seven kids and 3 girls. And these 3 girls asked me to translate Russian fairy tales into English. Well, I'm not great in translating fairy tales, but it's so charming. So for me, the motivation it's just the soul. Well, I don't know if my soul is pure because I'm the worst sinner you can imagine. Well, because I have to confess all the time because I misstep all the time. But I just have joy when people smile and people have their lives and families and they live as conservatives, and it's wonderful. Yeah, we have this program, and actually we just established a group called Welcome to Russia, and I serve on the board. We also have people there with dual citizenship from Germany and France and Australia and Austria. And so those are now Russian citizens. They serve on the board with me because we hold hands. We're holding hands to help to those who are looking for the Salvation Ark. And the Salvation Ark today for conservatives is Russia, and the word gets out. So we have many applications from those people.
Well, let me ask you, Ms. Butina, do you think more people will move if there is a peace deal?
I don't think it's related. Well, the number one reason why people come here is because they believe in God, they're conservatives, and they hate and they do not accept LGBT agenda. Well, if the US will come back being a conservative state and they stop the LGBT propaganda, then maybe people just, always prefer to keep their homes. But you should understand they come not because they want to, they come out of necessity because they know that their kids are trained now and against your will as parents to become LGBT, so you lose your future. So people come here not because they necessarily love Russia, but because they're looking for a safe place where they actually survive and they keep their cultural ancestries until their world and the times to come. That's why. So I don't think it's related to Ukraine or Russia or any military zone. It's more related to their hearts and souls.
It's an interesting point you raise about the LGBT community. What's the situation for those already in Russia? What's their current prospect?
Well, the LGBT in Russia is banned. And yeah, absolutely. The whole movement cannot propagate. You cannot go on the streets and do parades and we are very proud of that. We're very proud that we have God in our constitution. We are very proud that we have mother and father in our constitution because we don't take any other gender because God created us this way. And yes, Russia is a conservative state today. And yes, LGBT is not welcome here. Okay? I think that's fine. We don't put people on a treatment or something, but okay, whatever you believe, but you have not you have not bring it to the kids at schools, not on the streets. You cannot do propaganda of LGBT, and you cannot have any official or unofficial movements of LGBT community. Okay, that's just our country. We're a sovereign country. That's what we decided. This is the path we decided for ourselves.
Well, Maria Butina, I thank you very much for making the time to join the show.
Thank you.
At Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
They've got to have a vote and a say.
it's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
My campaign is going very well.
presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're